And I always like when the Zoom starts and then all of a sudden, like it like pours in the participants. Uh, anyway, it's Ari Rosenbaum here for day deux. I guess that's the extent of my year of French in high school. The second day of that 401k National Virtual Conference. We'll do this again next year. Of course, that 401ksite.com for further information on all our live events. We will return live in person Friday, April the 8th in Phoenix. I think the way it looks like it again, I think the lockout will end very, very soon. Then we do it in June 24th in Miami at Lone Depot Park. Yes, they have a baseball team in Miami. More importantly, there'll be Mets game tickets that night. We also have game tickets for the Diamondbacks. I forget who they're going to play. Charlotte, we're going to do in October, and then we'll see what happens. September, I'm still thinking Seattle, and June, early June, I got to get my buddy Larry to talk to the Yankees and see if I can afford to have an event over there because it's been a couple of years since we had a New York event. But anyway, I want to introduce James Holland. I've known James Holland almost as long as I've had my own practice. Met him when LinkedIn had those nice little groups, discussion groups. There's not much discussions in there anymore. James was one of the few who saw things back in 2010 the way I saw things, fee disclosure, plan sponsor, fiduciary liability issues. He's one of the first guys to push out 338 when nobody else would. And remember the old days when people said that was a gimmick?
Yes, yeah. Our friend Elmer, right? Wasn't that his name?
Yeah, there was also a local broker in New York who lost a case to you, I think, and they said, "Oh, that 338, that's just marketing."
Yes, just marketing, just exactly. The ploy.
Exactly. So without further introduction, all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina, James Holland.
Appreciate it, Ari. We don't have a baseball team yet, but I think we're going to try and buy that one in Miami at some point. So hopefully that will.
Tampa Bay is probably going to be
that will change. I appreciate the time and thank you. Let me just do this screen share thing here for a second. Give me a second to find the presentation. Ari's better at this than I am, having done about 1 million of these things. So if you'll just bear with me for a moment. Like Ari said, we've known each other for longer than either one of us cares to admit. And one of the things I want folks to take away, if anything else, from today's event is if you haven't taken the time to speak with Ari, please do. There's no one who is more genuine or well-versed in the space. So any advisor on here would be wise to get on his calendar and spend a little time with him. So can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Great. So I've already passed the beginning. So what we talk about from a 401k perspective in terms of selling, again, for those who are maybe not familiar, in terms of, you always hear about the ABCs, and now I'm going too fast again, my apologies. The word closing always drives me crazy because to me, it seems like a conclusion, and that's the last thing you want when you're looking at it from an ERISA perspective. So while I'm a big fan of the movie and the end of the play, this is the process when it comes to working with plan sponsors is, again, we're going to get into a little more about selling and buying and things like that. But this is a relationship business, and that's your biggest hurdle. So the idea of closing or ending something never really sat well with me as far as this process goes. So we have a few other C's that we're going to focus on today. So obviously you want to be committed, not the first kind for the one who flew over the cuckoo's nest fans, but understanding this business is a marathon and not a sprint. So you got to be in it for the long haul. There is no magic wands or secret weapons where you sit down once with someone and tell them how great you are, and then all of a sudden, you become the advisor. It's a 5 to 7 touch business, and it does some of them, without any type of prior relationship. You're looking at a, 9, 12, 18 month sales cycle. Just finished one with an advisor we've been working with for 2 years. And his first plan, and he stuck to it. And it started out at about 3.1 million. when we started the conversation and we closed it, we got it the other day, and it's, a $5 million plan. So persistence and being able to stay in the long haul is also important. Consistency in the message. This is one of the things that we hammer home to all of our advisor partners. The people you're speaking to get between 5 to 11 phone calls and who knows how many emails a week from people like us, or people who purport to be like us and want to win the business. The vast majority of them change their messages like they change their socks. So every time they reach out, we have the greatest website, we have the greatest lineup, we have the greatest. You want to win in this business, you want to retain the clients, the message has to be the same. And that's one of the things that we absolutely, not that there are any requirements for advisors to be Millennium Partners, but one of the things that we absolutely insist upon is the message does not change. So every time we call, it's the same thing. Every time we email, it's the same thing. Why? Because we believe in it. Because if you don't believe in it, guess what? There's zero chance of them believing in it. So the consistency of the message is important. It takes human beings 8 to 10 times of hearing things before it sinks in. So that is also why we try to make sure that folks realize the easier it is to be with a consistent message, the quicker they'll be able to grasp it, as opposed to trying to throw anything against the wall and trying to make it stick. Communication. And again, these ERISA, we all know, is very boring. So we try to make a little bit light of it. So for any of the Seinfeld folks in the room, again, it's a little leave behind, something that you can make an excuse to go back and have a conversation on, but it's also a dripping process. The idea being a little bit at a time. Therefore, you're educating at the same time, but you're also in that consistency. The message, the information you're giving is all the same. And I will share an example. Have an advisor down here in North Carolina, again, a younger gentleman just getting into the business, and he was diligent about calling, about emailing, about mailing. And he would, until people told him to stop, he's going to send them something. Well, about 12 months into it, got a call back from a plan sponsor who said he needed to come in and do some education meetings. It had been a while and they needed to see him. And he did not recognize the name. So he went back to check his notes. And in fact, they weren't a client. So he reached out and said, listen, I've been communicating with so-and-so, but you guys aren't a client. The CFO told them that so-and-so had quit. He has no idea who the advisor is. So that gentleman became the advisor because there was a folder on the desk with his name on it and all the information that he shared. So while they might not respond right away, the good ones who are engaged are saving, because either they want to compare to what they're getting or they want to educate themselves. So communication is also super important. Compassionate. Again, the sales people get a rap all the time. Ari talks about LinkedIn. One of my pet peeves is, if you're a fiduciary, you don't sell. Well, I don't care what you do in life, you're selling, whether it's an an item, a thought process, yourself, whatever the case. I don't care what profession you're in, you are. So you want to be compassionate with the people, because this, again, is a relationship business. Human resource departments are shrinking. Now they have to deal with, some people coming back to the office, the vast majority of people not wanting to, on top of health insurance and PTO and FLMA and everything else that goes along with it. A lot of the times the 401k gets dumped on them, okay? And they have no one to help them. So again, you want to make sure you're looking at it from the other person's perspective. So therefore you can add a human element to what it is you're trying to do and offer to become the 401k back office. We use that all the time in the approaches because they have no one supporting them. So when you tell them, hey, listen, we're not here to replace you. We're here to make you the hero. We're here to have you go to your boss and say, look, I found this problem. I saved us all this money, and this is how I'm going to fix it. Because we don't need the credit. We want to be there as the advisor and or consultant. So you always want to make sure you're being respectful of the time, but also the situation for which they're in, because a lot of people are not approaching it that way. consulting, and I know here's the, hey, James, you're doing the play on words aspect here. But you really do, especially nowadays. We had another huge Supreme Court decision. I know some people don't think it's that big of a deal because it was just remanded, and it's probably a topic for a separate day, for which I'm more than happy to have that conversation. But the 401k space is changing dramatically, and a lot of people are woefully unprepared from a compliance and full understanding. For most employers, it's, hey, this is some retirement plan. People save some money. They pick some investments. Someone come and does a little bit of education, and that's it. And that's where these plans find themselves in trouble. So you want to look at it from a consultative perspective. Because again, yes, selling and buying, again, nobody wants to be sold anything. People want to buy things. And the best way to get them to buy something is what? Have it become their idea. So keep that communication, be consistent in your messaging, do it from a consultative standpoint, and then you'll be able to see a far better result in terms of trying to, jam some product or idea down somebody's throat. Collaborating. Okay, I've said it a million different times. ERISA is a team sport. It is just way too complex. If you're a sole advisor and you think you're going to learn everything and provide every service for plan sponsors in the future, even with all the technology we have, you are sadly mistaken. You are going to be replaced quickly. You need to have partners like Ari, like James, a good auditor, like PCS, the folks who are going to be speaking later, from a record-keeping TPA perspective. People who are advisor-centric, who are going to be there to support you, to keep everybody rowing in the same direction. That is the only way you're going to be able to compete going forward, and understanding that the pie is big enough. I'm a former broker. We deal with brokers all the time. And the mentality is what? Very defensive, mine. And I'm no math major, but 100% of nothing is far worse than 20% of something. So learn to bring in the people you need to help support you, because again, plan sponsors don't want to know that you're the go-to person for everything. A, you can't know everything, and B, there's not enough hours in the day where you could possibly get everything done. There, 95% of our business comes from outside advisors. And we hear all the time, well, how do I explain myself and my worth to the plan sponsor, and aren't I deflecting by bringing you guys in? And the answer is absolutely not. Okay, the plan sponsor likes the idea of a team approach. They like the idea that there's someone else back there deeper on the bench who can help with whether it's compliance or investing or administration or whatever the case may be. So it makes for a much more well-rounded discussion, and certainly a different comfort level when it comes to how plan sponsors react. So what are we concluding? Again, I know I said I took away, the whole, always be closing aspect. None of us want the steak knives, okay? All of us want the coffee, okay? And the only way to get the coffee is to take the approach you saw a few minutes ago. Look at it from a very big, broad perspective, okay? Don't be afraid to let other people in, okay? You can't know everything, as far as not just from a selling perspective, from a 401k perspective. Ari is an ERISA attorney, okay? General attorneys, they don't do ERISA. Why? Because it's very specific. It is super complex, and that's why you need to specialize in it. That's why even if you don't want to make this all of your practice, if you want to make it a consistent revenue generating part of it, reach out and, find some people you can partner with who can help you understand the value of running a plan cost effectively and efficiently, because that will lead to all sorts of opportunities that you might be doing in your practice, whether it's wealth management, succession planning, life planning, whatever the case may be. So I know I kind of whip through that pretty quick there, but I, again, just like to keep things at a very high level, and I'm happy to jump into all or none of the weeds. Ari, I will turn it back to you.
I have a question. What have you seen, again, when we first met, it's almost 12 years ago already. What have you seen the big differences? I mean, you're one of the first people I remember coming out with a 338. I don't think I might have known one other company. I think when I was at Myers Swazi, there might have been one company that I knew of. What do you see the differences between now and then? Back, going back to 2010, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, clearly, technology has helped in that regard. Where whether we like it or not, between the legislation and the regulations and the litigation, the back then the 401k was the least thought about benefit in the human resource basket, and now it's front and center because of everything that's taken place. So at least you're getting more employers who are willing to listen and have the conversation, only because people are getting access to information. It used to be buried on the Schedule C in terms of what people were making. Now, it's easier for folks to find. Whether 408b2 is not the greatest thing, but there are some people who take a look at it. So I think people are starting to realize, hey, wait, while the relationship is important, if I really want what's best for the employees, I need to get a little more engaged. So thankfully we have shifted in that direction. It's certainly gone from broker and product driven to hopefully back to the participant driven, where it needs to be.
Mike Webb, of course, always with the good questions. If you can make
Yes.
one recommendation about selling your services better, what would you say?
Yeah, again, Mike, not to beat that drum, but the consistency message as far as make sure you're out there. One of the things that we held back from originally was you don't want to toot your horn too much, but the credentialing aspect is so important. Mike is involved in a whole bunch of communications, so any advisor here who's not talking to Mike Webb is crazy, because the guy is, he's being humble here, but he's a wealth of knowledge, and he shares it, in those LinkedIn discussions and his, ask an expert. That's the stuff you have to get out there, because that's what they're going to look for. The products, the investments, they're all the same. Tout what you're really good at. There's rarely a question Mike and his team cannot answer, and he puts it out there in a very professional way, so it's not overbearing. But if you guys, my partner Rick's an IRS enrolled agent. We do a lot of correction work, and we do a lot of expert consulting and litigation, and we let folks know. And people are like, you're crazy. Why would you tell someone you help people sue plan sponsors? Well, I know what the plaintiff's bar is looking for. So if I reach out to you before they do, we can hopefully fix it and remove that target before anybody else finds it. So, really find what you're best at, and, focus on that. With the major increase in fiduciary liability.
I'll read the question. With the major increase in the cost of fiduciary liability insurances, do you think the demand for 338 services will be greater, even among larger plan sponsors who have traditionally utilized 321 services?
Yes, Mike, I do. Again, for those who are unfamiliar, the 321 is basically the GPS. So the plan sponsor and the committee are still, accountable for those decisions. What they need is the professional driver, because again, they're not investment professionals. They join the committee out of some, sense of loyalty to management or wanting to make a difference, which is great, but you're assuming an unlimited personal liability that the vast majority are not prepared for. So I do believe you're going to see a shift of that complete outsourcing from or effectively delegating, for any of the legal folks on here, to where they're going to walk away from the investments decisions, just because, especially with the ruling we had on Wednesday. For those who don't know, the Supreme Court has remanded the Northwestern case back to the Seventh Circuit, and the defense of, well, I had a whole bunch of funds and some were good and some were bad, so I'm okay. Yeah, that's not going to hold any water now.
It's a significant case because, quite honestly, I thought it was going to go the other way, which would have made plan participants have a tougher time bringing lawsuits, because I still contend that federal courts are getting sick of these cases, and that's why you see a lot of. You remember as a kid Mad Libs,
Yes.
And I think a lot of these ERISA litigators, they like, you know, they fill in the blank complaint. It's like so-and-so paid this in fees, and that's 20% higher than plans of a similar nature, according to 401k averages book. Therefore, there's a breach of fiduciary liability. And I think the courts are seeing it for what it is and saying, you know what, if you're not showing to me why that's a breach, we're going to throw this out.
Yes, specificity is important, and that's where, so that was good on two fronts, because it takes away that we have a lot of choices. So if we have some bad ones, we're okay, which of course is absurd. But it also is gonna raise the bar from a pleading perspective to eliminate those copycats who think if they, like you said, just cut and paste, they're going to be able to, which will hopefully then, you know, get plan sponsors to realize, wait a second, there is a difference with regards to, you know, the folks that we're talking about. I think I did see something about meeting minutes in terms of why that's important. Obviously, one of the key things in the case there is a documented prudent process. So to Ari's point, yes, just because the 401k book of averages says you paid 20% more, but you don't know what services they're getting. So if you can document the services you're getting and the process you put in place, again, if it's prudent, then you're not going to have any issues. But if you can't define what you did and or the value that you're bringing, then obviously you're gonna leave yourself exposed. So while detailed meeting minutes are important, but also if you're going to keep the committees, getting those folks educated on the roles, making sure they acknowledge the fact that they have this liability, but also a better understanding of what they're trying to provide is obviously always going to help anyone from a protection standpoint.
I think that's it.
Great. Well, again, I appreciate the time and enjoy the rest of the conference. You got some real great people coming up.
Well, I hope to see you soon. You know, we may have baseball in May.
Yes. I think
and Charlotte in October.
Yes, which we will be ready for. So
yeah, I hope to finally visit the NASCAR Hall of Fame. That's
there you go. We'll have to make sure.
Yeah, you know,
get that on the schedule.
Gotta go see the Jeff Gordon plaque. So anyway, thank you, James.
Appreciate it.
Next, actually before probably this weekend, I got a snowstorm coming my way. So I will get those YouTube links up over this weekend. Check out that 401k National Virtual Conference on YouTube. Both days should be up. And you can look forward to that, as well as all the other interviews that I've done in the past. Last year, Doc Gooden, Walt Frazier, as well as some of the other interviews that I did during the pandemic, which probably should do again now that I have all this free time with all these events. But anyway, next on our agenda, James Moyna, CPA, JMM CPAs, with offices in Chicago and Atlanta. James has been a supporter of mine for many years. First met him at Wrigley Field, then what is now known as Truist Park in Atlanta. And, you know, I recommend that when you're looking for an auditor, yeah, you can go to KPMG or was it Big Four now? I don't know. When I went to school, it was like Big Six. Yeah, you could go over there and pay $50,000 for an audit, or you can go to a firm that all they do are retirement plan audits. And I think you're best off going to somebody who's an expert. And James is certainly one of those experts. And James is going to talk about the new auditing standards, which I think that not a lot of folks realize, especially about the limited scope audit and all that kind of stuff. So James, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Ari. I'm going to get set up here to share my screen so you can see our presentation for today. Very good. I think I'm sharing it there. Ari, can you confirm that we're seeing the slides?
Yes.
Very good. So again, thank you for having me today, Ari. Really appreciate the opportunity that this affords us to get some timely information out to our clients. Ari and I were speaking earlier, and we actually have 120 clients now in 16 different states. So As much as we love to get out and see all of them, it's not logistically possible as frequently as we'd like. So this is a great format and venue for us to reach some folks with some timely information regarding some new audit standards that are going to apply to this year's audits. So today I'm going to cover basically these 4 items, the new audit standards. We're going to take a look at certifications that come from asset custodians, what they mean, what you need to know about them, which will be new this year, and how they're used. We're going to talk about something, a new concept called reportable findings, which will be things that the auditors this year are going to be required to report in writing. So we'll take a look at what those are. And then we'll take a look at the new auditor opinion that will be issued on planned financial statements. It will be significantly different than what was issued in the past. Speaking of the past, the limited scope audit is gone. And if you were to look at your planned financial statements from prior years, you would very likely see this paragraph referred to as a disclaimer of opinion. And I've highlighted there, it says right in it, we do not express an opinion. To which many plan sponsors might have thought, well, my goodness, what did we hire you to do if you're not even going to express an opinion? We actually did do a lot of work, but at end of day, previously, we issued these limited scope audit opinions. It's actually felt that in the industry that this was a contributor to very low quality. And by that, I mean, the Department of Labor has gone out several years now and looked at the work that audit firms are doing. And the findings have been really poor. And when I say really poor, I mean the most recent investigation the DOL did. So they went out to accounting firm offices, pulled some audits off the shelves, and looked at the work performed. Their finding on the most recent study said that 39% of the audit files they looked at in the public accounting profession were deficient in some manner. Well, I don't know about you, but if you're running a business and 39% of the product coming off of the assembly line is deficient, that's a problem, a significant one. So since then, that study was probably 4 or 5 years old now. It's pretty dated. But since then, the regulators, DOL, and the accounting profession have been doing some things to try to improve quality. And one of those things has to do with the new standards that have just come out for this year and a change in what the auditor's opinion is actually going to look like. So no longer are we going to say, hey, by the way, we're not going to express an opinion, because some firms looked at that and said, well, hey, end of the day, I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm not going to do much work. That was actually a misunderstanding of what needed to be done and has now changed. So the new standards. AUC section 703. That's really not too important to you. Really what's important to you is the date. These are effective for periods ending after, on or after December 15th, 2021. So essentially, these new standards are effective for December 31, 2021 audits that will be conducted, starting now and running through the summer months up to that July 31st deadline for attaching that audit to your Form 5500 filing. So what are some of the new things? First, for the auditor, we're going to obtain some additional management representations and confirmations. And that's going to first appear to plan sponsors in the engagement letters that we send out. We've been sending ours out very recently and have gotten some feedback along the lines of, hey, my gosh, this engagement letter has grown to 8 pages. Historically, it was closer to 4 or 5. Those additional pages and text have to do with these new audit standards. and the things that we are now asking plan sponsors to, confirm and take responsibility for. Big picture, what are those things? The plan sponsor is now going to be responsible for having an understanding of the certification that gets issued on plan assets. We're going to take a look at that in a little bit. Plan sponsor is going to be responsible for maintaining a plan document that's in compliance with current tax law, so document and amendments. It's surprising to me how often, with new clients in particular, how often they have trouble actually finding a signed plan document. That's something that's really going to be called out and will be mentioned in the engagement letter up front, that it's plan sponsor responsibility to have a signed, timely, updated plan document. And then also that the plan operation is consistent with the plan document provisions. The plan sponsor needs to represent that, yes, in fact, they believe that that is the case. We're going to audit that when we do our audit. But the plan sponsor is going to also have to take some ownership of making sure the plan operates with the way the plan is written. Next item there that I underlined has to do with communicating additional matters, which are reportable findings, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. Historically, some of those findings may have just been communicated verbally. Hey, we noticed this during the audit. You ought to improve on this area, sort of thing. In the past, may have been a verbal communication. Going forward with these new standards, those will be in writing. It'll just be in writing between the accounting firm and the plan sponsor. It's not going to get attached to your 5500 or anything like that. However, if a regulator does show up on your doorstep, they're going to ask for what were those reportable findings and what did your audit firm tell you they discovered that needed to be improved upon. And then the last item, then the new form of the auditor's opinion. We're going to take a look at what the auditor's opinion is going to look like under the new standards going forward. And then also, if I back up to the next to last bullet point, it talks about performing additional audit procedures unique to plans. Ari was mentioning earlier, really looking at hiring a firm that specializes in retirement plan audits. And thank you for that plug, certainly. And I think that's very important, right? If you've got a plan is a very unique sort of audit. Think about if you're involved in your company audit, there's a concept of materiality. What is material to the overall plan, financial statement presentation that's being made? And on a company audit, that is a very different sort of concept. When it comes to a plan, the whole concept of what is material really comes down to maybe $1. If $1 is missing out of a participant's account, where'd it go? Where is it? So what's material on a plan audit can be much different than what it would look like on a regular commercial audit. So whoever's doing that plan audit needs to be aware of that. They need to be sensitive to it, and they need to have their antenna up and really be looking at things from a perspective of a plan participant. One of the things that we've been doing the last couple of years along those lines is really drilling down into payroll data and gathering payroll sorts of information electronically, and actually testing every pay code that's going through the plan payroll system, making sure that contributions are being calculated properly. That's the sort of thing that many larger firms may not do, that don't specialize in this sort of area, but firms that do plans and plans only know how very important plan compensation is to the audit, and do some extra procedures around those sorts of things that other firms may not detect. Just one area in particular that we look at especially. So moving on to under the new standards, what is new for the plan sponsor? And I don't know why this is necessarily new to the plan sponsor, but it is called out in the new standards. And it talks about the responsibility of the plan sponsor to maintain a current plan instrument, plan document, plan adoption agreement, and by current, updated for current tax law, including amendments, and that those must be signed. I mentioned earlier that oftentimes we're working with clients that have just gone over the threshold to require their first audit, and they seem to struggle actually finding the signed plan document. Well, if there's no signed plan document, there is no plan. So that is critical that plan sponsors maintain a current document, it's fully executed, and easily on file for the auditors to work with. Then beyond that, you've got the plan document. Now it's important to understand that the plan is operating consistently with what the plan document says. So as it says here, in conformity with the plan's provisions. So are the transactions that are going to be presented on the plan financial statements actually in conformity with the plan provisions? Big picture, think of it as contributions and distributions. Those are the two primary transactions that are going through a plan in any given year. Were those contributions processed and calculated in a way that agrees with what the plan document says? Probably the easiest examples to think of are bonuses and overtime. Did the plan compensation and contribution calculation include or exclude those items? And is that in agreement with the terms of the plan document? And then the next one talks about including maintaining sufficient records with respect to each of the participants to determine benefits due. Well, what does that mean? Records related to what? Records related to date of birth, date of hire, date of termination. Those are all huge factors in when does someone become eligible? What is their vested percentage? Are they due benefits based on their termination date? So things like I-9s, et cetera. And how long do you have to maintain those? Well, technically, as long as the person's in the plan, which could be many years. You have some people that you've employed for 30 years. You need records of date of hire, date of birth, salary, that sort of thing for 30 years to be able to have sufficient records to identify what benefits would be due to them when it does come time to pay them out. So sometimes people think of record keeping in terms of statute of limitations and that sort of thing being around 7 years. Really, for a plan, it's much longer than 7 years, and really goes back to how long is that individual participant with you, and do you have the records supporting their date of birth, date of hire, et cetera, as I mentioned. Also new for the plan sponsor, the plan sponsor is going to have to affirmatively tell the auditor to do the type of audit they want them to do. Now, I know that's a bit complex, perhaps, when you're not sure what the options are, but essentially, if you've had a limited scope audit done in the past, what you're going to have this year is something referred to, and this just rolls off the tongue, a 103A3C audit. That's the new audit standard. And a 103A3C audit, if that's what the plan sponsor wants us to do, it means they're saying that they have a valid certification, which we're going to look at in a minute. And historically, it was really up to the auditor to decide if the certification was valid. Now that responsibility is put back on the plan sponsor to say, yes, we have a valid certification and we want you to do a 103A3C audit. Now we're going to help our clients with that understanding, and I'm going to give you a brief understanding of it here in a moment. But that's something now that is shifted to be a plan sponsor responsibility. And then also that the investment information that has been certified by a qualified institution. Well, what in the world is a qualified institution? 3 institutions can certify: banks, insurance companies, and trust companies. Those industries are already very highly regulated, and they've been given, I don't know, I would use the term permission to certify the statements that they provide to their clients. We're going to take a look at one, as I mentioned, in a moment. Management will need to determine the certification meets the qualifications of the code, that it's essentially signed and includes the words complete and accurate. I'm going to show you an actual certification in a moment. It might look familiar to some of you. And then the plan sponsor is going to have to affirmatively tell the auditor that, yes, this information on the certified statements has been presented and disclosed in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. What is that? Just think of it as those statements need to be displayed on a fair market value basis. That's very different from a corporate audit, which is not at fair market value, but plan financial statements are going to be presented at fair market value, and your certified statements should be also a reflection of that. And if they have been in the past, quite frankly, they will be, and we can help you see where that is on the statements if you need help. So anyway, let's look at a sample certification so you can see a little bit about what I'm talking about. So this slide shows you an actual certification from Fidelity. Fidelity is a large provider, and I've highlighted the big three things here that a plan sponsor now would want to verify and say that, yes, we do have a valid certification and you, auditor, can do a 103A3C audit, formerly known as limited scope. So the first thing I highlighted there is I said banks, trust companies, and insurance companies can certify. So where did this certification come from? It came from Fidelity Management Trust Company. So you can check off number one. This is a trust company, they can certify. Does it include the words complete and accurate? And you see I've highlighted there near the end. It says FMTC, which is Fidelity Management Trust Company, certifies that the information in the reports provided is complete and accurate. Those two words need to show up in the certification. And then it needs to be signed. So you can see right here, Miss Jean Maloney has signed this certification. Many of you with Fidelity have seen this. This is just to give you an example of what I would say are the big three items that you're looking for when you're trying to determine if you've got a valid certification. So this slide, moving forward, if there are three things that I really want plan sponsors to take away from today's presentation, they are, if I had to boil all of these slides down to one, it would be these three things. So first, that the plan has operated in accordance with the plan document. Sounds simple, right? But I would say 20, maybe as high as 25% of the audits that we look at annually have some sort of disconnect between what the plan document says and what actually happened in operation. So it happens frequently. So a plan sponsor wants to make sure that their plan is operating in accordance with the terms of the plan document. Just a tip. So if you've amended the plan's definition of compensation, my question to you would be, did anybody tell the person that runs payroll? Do they know now what different compensation has to be used when they run payroll? If your plan amends the vesting terms, when it comes time to pay somebody out, does who's ever processing distributions know that the vesting terms have changed and how to pay them out? So it's very important to keep up to date operation with plan documents. Plan sponsors under the new standards, number 2, are going to be responsible for understanding and representing to their auditors that, yes, the financial statements are a true reflection of plan activity, and that activity is consistent with the document. So the statement of net assets, and in particular, the statement of changes in net assets that show up on the plan financial statements, need to be reviewed and understood by the plan sponsors to make sure that they understand that, yes, that is an accurate reflection of plan activity. And 3, under the new standards, the plan sponsor, as I mentioned, is going to be responsible for representing to the auditor that, yes, the certification, this item that we looked at just a moment ago, that certification is in fact valid and can be relied upon to do the 103AC3 audit, formerly known as limited scope, that yes, those things are all present in the certification and the auditor is good to go with doing that form of audit. So was it issued by the right entity? Did it include the words complete and accurate? And was it signed? Beyond that, so let's talk a little bit about reportable findings. I mentioned earlier that oftentimes during an audit, some things might come up. Depending on the extent of their severity, they may have just been addressed verbally with the plan sponsor. Going forward, pretty much anything we find on an audit is going to end up in a written communication of reportable findings. What is a reportable finding? It is essentially an identified instance of non-compliance or suspected non-compliance with laws or regulations. Sounds pretty broad, but we're going to look at some examples here in a moment. It's a finding from the audit that's in the auditor's professional judgment, significant and relevant to those charged with governance regarding their responsibility to oversee the financial reporting process. A reportable finding is an indication of a deficiency in internal control that may have been identified during the audit. Perhaps there isn't a proper oversight of certain planned transactions. Those sorts of things will have to be communicated by the auditor in writing and are what's now being called reportable findings under the new standards. So let's look at some, so what are some real life examples of something that would be a reportable finding? When it comes to plan provisions, I've talked a lot about plan compensation. Quite frankly, payroll and plan compensation are where it all begins. It's where contributions are calculated, and it's either right or wrong. It either is consistent with what the plan document says or not. And if it's not, that's a reportable finding. The use of forfeitures. We see this often on audits also. Your plan forfeiture account, think of it this way, should be zeroed out once a year. Pretty simple. So you've got people that terminate, that are not fully vested. The unvested portion of their account goes into the forfeiture account within the plan. And then once a year, that forfeiture account should be zeroed out. It can be used, you'll have to look at the document. It can be used to offset contributions, which is most common, and or pay plan expenses, which would include audit fees. So there's a pool of money there in the forfeiture account, and it has to be used up on an annual basis. Vesting, if we see situations of participants being paid incorrect vested amounts, that would be a reportable finding. And eligibility. Are plan participants coming in when they should? So maybe your plan has quarterly entry dates, been employed for 30 days or something like that, and come in first of a quarter. Is that actually happening? And if not, ends up as a reportable finding on the audit communicated in writing. A few more examples, non-timely contributions. I know that you've all heard plenty about that. I would just say rule of thumb, 5 business days. 5 business days from a payroll date, employee contributions should be in the plan. If not, I'm not going to say they are late, but they might be. It's a very subjective sort of determination. Another reportable finding might be census data errors or dates of hire, dates of birth, all of that sort of thing accurate when it comes to the plan records, because those are very important in calculating eligibility, contributions, etc. Failure to perform the annual compliance tests, that's the ADP, ACP, top-heavy, 415 testing. Those things need to be done annually, and if they fail, corrective actions taken. Financial reporting or disclosure misstatements. Quite frankly, I think a lot of that is going to still reside with the plan auditor. And we try to, as much as possible, go out in draft form first with our clients, let them look at a draft of what the financial statements show and go over that with them so that make sure that we all understand what's being disclosed, why it's being disclosed, where it came from. This next one, insufficient monitoring of plan providers. Think of your plan this way. Ultimately, a plan sponsor is responsible for everything that happens with the plan. Now, you can hire fiduciaries, which is great, and I would strongly recommend it. But the decision to hire a fiduciary is a fiduciary decision in and of itself. So you can't 100% hire away your responsibilities. And as such, it's important that you monitor those plan providers on a regular and consistent basis. So, James talked about earlier, committee meeting minutes and that sort of thing, a prudent process, form a committee, meet at least annually. I would suggest more often, and document that you met, what you talked about, what decisions were made. That's your prudent process for monitoring the plan, the providers, making sure that you're with providers that know what they're doing, that are charging the right fee for the services received. I'm not referring to getting the lowest fee. The lowest fee is not always best. It might not be best for your plan. You can shop at Walmart or you can shop at Macy's. It's fine to shop at Macy's if you're getting what you're paying for. And if you're monitoring that process, you know what you're paying for. The last item there talks about inadequate complementary user entity controls. What in the world are those? Those user entity controls appear in something called SOC 1 reports, which are audits of your plan providers. And within those SOC reports, there will be a section referred to as user entity controls. The user entity is the plan sponsor. So those reports will list off usually maybe a dozen, maybe 20 sorts of controls that your plan provider expects you to have in place on your side in order to make their processing accurate. Think of it in terms of garbage in, garbage out. If you give your plan provider bad census data, they're going to run with it. They're going to process whatever you gave them. So one of the user entity controls is going to say the plan sponsor is responsible for giving us accurate data. They're just processing what you gave them. It's we as the auditors that then come behind and actually audit the data. So we're going to look up people's hire dates and birth dates sort of thing against I-9s. We're going to verify compensation against salary agreements and that sort of thing as to what people are actually being paid. But your plan processor, TPAs, they're just processing whatever you gave them. So it's important that you have controls in place such that what you gave them is accurate. So each of those things would be reportable findings if in fact those things are not in place. And as I mentioned earlier, those things now under the new standards must be communicated in writing. In the past, some of those things may have been, well, we picked a sample and you didn't have the I-9 for 2 of the people in the entire sample, and we went back to you and you had some sort of alternative records. We might just tell you verbally that you need to do a little better job of keeping records for plan participants. Under the new standards, that communication needs to take the form of writing, and it'll be in a written document to you from auditor to plan sponsor. That writing is going to include a description of the finding. It's going to be sufficient information to explain the context. What was the scope of it? What was the finding? What perhaps is done on your side to remediate it? And then an explanation of the potential effects of the finding. So this will be new. I haven't fully looked at what that communication is going to look like. Again, it's probably going to be something that we're going to go to our clients with in a draft form. Make sure we have a clear understanding of what the finding is. Make sure our plan sponsors have a clear understanding of what's expected to remove it as a reportable finding going forward, and that we're all on the same page before we go final with such a communication. And the last thing, the standards say we should not issue a communication that there are no reportable findings. So you're not going to get a clean bill of health. You're not going to get a letter saying, oh, hey, we did this audit and there are no reportable findings. The standards don't allow for that. So if there are some, it'll come in writing. If there are none, no news is good news. You won't have any communication. And then lastly, this is just an excerpt. The new auditor's report, just so you know, is quite lengthy, but I pulled this out. Remember when we looked at the disclaimer very early in the presentation, the auditor said, hey, by the way, we expressed no opinion. That's gone. We're actually going to express an opinion. So I've highlighted some things here. In the new auditor's report, it says, in our opinion, and then it goes into what the auditor is opining on. And I've highlighted a couple of items here. In our opinion, et cetera, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. It does also go on to say, it mentions management, which is a plan sponsor, and it talks about the certification. Management determined, it's talking about the certification in that paragraph. It says the information prepared and certified by an institution that management, plan sponsor, determined meets the requirements of ERISA section 103A3C. So that's going back to, again, the plan sponsor has looked at the certification, made sure it came from a bank, trust company, or insurance company, and contained the words complete and accurate and was signed. That's actually going to be in the auditor's opinion that the plan sponsor has made that determination. And therefore, the auditor could do this 103A3C audit, formerly known as the limited scope. So that was everything I had. I see maybe there's some Q&A there, Ari. I know for you plan sponsors on the line, that's a little bit.
Two of them want people want slides, so you have a email address so they could request from you directly.
Yeah, actually, there at the very end, if you want to take that down, there's my contact information. Send me an email. Be very happy to send you the slides. And if you have specific questions, can address those one-on-one also.
Yeah, just one question from Mike Webb. So the new 103A3C audit is no different than a limited scope audit, save for a few lines of the certification. I read some articles that indicated that the audit process itself would be different, that the auditor would have to kick the tires at the record keeper more than they did in the former limited scope audit. Was that incorrect?
I would say that's not necessarily incorrect. It's very similar to the limited scope audit, but has now taken some of the responsibilities for determining if you can do the 103A3C audit over to the plan sponsor, and having the plan sponsor tell us that, yes, we have a valid certification, you can use it to do this type of audit. So are we going to do a lot of additional testing and whatnot? No, our testing procedures are going to be pretty much the same, but our communication of findings, when we talked about those reportable findings, will look much different. Like I said, a lot of those historically were just communicated verbally. Now they're going to be communicated. Pretty much any little thing we find is going to end up in a communication from auditor to plan sponsor as to, here's what we found, here's what we think you should do differently. And it'll stay in that reportable finding letter until remediated.
Okay. Sounds great. I appreciate it. That's perfect as always. I think it's always a great insight, because I think that the auditing process is one of the poorly misunderstood parts of the retirement plan business. They don't realize what the audit entails and what it really doesn't entail. So it's always great to get your perspective. Next on our list, Ed Dressel from Retire Ready Solutions. Ed, are you ready to go?
I am ready to go. It's good to be here. See if I can
Share the screen. You got the opportunity.
Yes, you just have to click a couple of buttons. Here we go. I hope everybody's doing well. See, does that everything looking right?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, excellent. Nice to be here. My name is Edward Dressel, or Ed Dressel, president owner of Retire Ready Solutions. Our focus is really to help you engage your participants. A lot of people are not focused on retirement planning. They're disengaged. There's a ton of talk today about financial planning. I actually read an article yesterday. It was focused on the teacher world, but it said teachers don't know what they're doing. The whole point of having a pension plan for a teacher was to make it simple. It's incredibly simple, and they're still not engaged. That is across the spectrum in America. We see people not understanding retirement, and the end result from talking to advisors that are focused on engaging participants that I hear is money gets left in the room. And I talk to advisors, if you have any group size, there's probably unmanaged assets in the room, and they're left there, and there's significant money to be made. And I want to talk about that and opportunities. Anytime there's a problem, the solution in this article, if you go out to the 403, it's under the American Retirement Association, their 403B website, ntsa.org-org.com, I think is the website. But it says, We need to have policymakers make information interventions. And I don't think people, even participants, don't need more information per se. More data. We've been telling them that's financial wellness. What do we need to show them? And there's a ton of information. Are people doing better? Are participants more engaged? Are they more ready for retirement than they were 10 years ago? I'm going to say that there's an opportunity here to really help you help them towards retirement success. So I want to focus on that now and how to really increase your business. But that takes me back to a story of a friend of mine, Richard. It was a meat cutter at a grocery store, a journeyman, made great money as blue collar worker, decent money for middle America. I loved Richard and his family, had a great family. And we got invited over for dinner one night. In the middle of dinner, I turned to Richard, and we we're having a great time. And he's about 60 years old at the time. And I said, Richard, what's retirement look like for you? I was expecting to hear of his vision, his plans, what he was doing. And he turned to me and said, I probably should start saving, shouldn't I? I was shocked by that comment. It hurt. Richard's a great guy. And if you're 60 years old, starting to save at 60 is not a good time to start. Unfortunately, that's not just true with Richard, but it's true with a lot of Americans. They have not got engaged. Richard could have easily had opportunity, but never participated. I'm not alone in this feeling. Plan sponsors have this feeling in spades. Fidelity's plan survey, I read this every year, and consistently they say that they're focused on their participants, their employees. Sponsors are increasingly focused. And if you read the last, I didn't see 2020, maybe they didn't do it, 2019, 2018, 2017, the retirement plan meetings for their employees' needs. Not abstract, financial wellness, success, education. I want them to succeed in retirement because they've probably sat in the room with Richard and kind of went, ouch, that hurts. I wish you got us. We had a 401k plan for you, Richard. What happened? And it doesn't happen. But if we back up, plan sponsors are focused on it. It's a plan. It's an opportunity to win business, keep business. If you're educating the participants, showing them the difference you're making. I'll talk about that in a minute in a story. But if we think about it, what does retirement look like? Here's a cartoon that came out in the local paper a few years ago. And this couple is disengaged to retirement. And that can happen in the one-on-one meetings, or it can happen with 30 people in the room where they go, really, I'm not interested. And they're disengaged in it. And it's how we comprehend retirement planning. Not only is that the truth, but what does it look like? Who else is talking about it? This is a cartoon, kind of funny, resonates. It even made a Super Bowl commercial where to talk about retirement planning. And I don't know if you saw this one a few years ago.
Wake up early, circles of cologne. Just got a job as a lifeguard in Savannah. Dropping 60s, they call me DJ Nana. 85 and I wanna go. Don't get mad. Get E-Trade, kiddo.
So I'm 85 and I want to go home. They didn't want to end up there, and Richard can easily be there, and the across the spectrum, and plan sponsors are saying, I want them to be retired. I want them to get focused on retirement, and they're in front of you as a plan advisor. And the problem is a meeting can often look like this, where the people are seriously disengaged about retirement. They're not focused on it. They're not interested in it. They don't understand why they have to sit in this meeting. And if they volunteered to be in here, I can guarantee they won't do it again. One plan sponsor that uses our solution, one of the advisors that uses us, went on site and said, who wants to meet with me? I had a brand new plan sponsor, and nobody wanted to meet with Brian Heckert. He's out of Southern Illinois. Nobody wanted to meet with him. Why? Because they'd been through the prior meeting like this. And the reality is Richard could have easily been in a meeting that looked like this. He just didn't think it was applicable. I don't understand it. The sad thing is you talk to him about Netflix, you talk to him about some TV show that's right now, they're engaged. But you talk to them about retirement and they turn you off. The reality is it could very easily be assets in the room that aren't being managed. Here we have Mackenzie. Mackenzie's a saver. She just switched jobs. She's got $100,000 with her old employer. She doesn't know what to do with it. And she's left it out of the room. Michael here, his parents just passed away and he's receiving an inheritance. He hasn't saved for retirement and he's not even thinking of using his inheritance for retirement. And it hasn't even crossed his mind. And the sad fact is, it's not going to cross his mind today. He's going to go through this meeting and say, what a waste of time. He's going to go buy that boat for this summer with the inheritance. And when he gets to retirement, he's going to think like, why don't I have any money? Why didn't I ever save? Massive opportunities. So when you're working with a room, there's often assets in the room that you're not aware of, that they're not going to talk about unless you engage them in a meaningful way. And let me give you a story. Gerald Burnett, I met him a number of years ago at a Charlie Epstein show. And Charlie said, go over and meet Gerald. And I sat down with Gerald. Gerald is the principal of the 401k division of Raymond Financial. They have about 800 employees. Gerald oversees this division. And I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. And Gerald said, we beat our sales last year by over 147%. They're just nailing it out of the park. And he loves small and middle plans because he says, I get to help real people and I make decent money. He doesn't go after the big plans anymore. They're with a company that could very easily. He says, I hit small and middle plans. They're being left alone and I'm really helping people and I make a good income. What is he tells me this story a few years ago about rolling a simple plan into a K plan, 21 employees, 10 participating. He got all 10 to electively roll their $1.5 million out of the old plan into the new plan, and all 10 increased their deferrals. Of the 11 that were not participating, he got all 11 to start participating, and he found $1.1 million outside the plan that he can roll in the plan. So he starts with $2.6 million. He's really happy with the plan. Everybody's participating. He engaged them in a meaningful way. He didn't have a meeting that looked like this, because there's often money in the room that you don't know about that they're not naturally going to talk about because you showed up in front of them. They're not thinking, hey, I got that inheritance. I need to share, need to talk to my advisor about it. Or I've got the money in the old 401k plan or an IRA. What do I do with it? What are the ramifications of people not saving? For people between 55 and 64 years old, this was out of a study from last year, their average assets are about $200,000. Not too bad, you say, except a number of those are significant savers. If we look at the median assets, it's $70,000. So significantly less. And that means there's a lot of people, there's a few people way up high that have saved a lot. I met one guy that invested in Google early. He had like $10 million in his account. But the median income is $69,000 for people 55 to 64. That's disastrous. That's like sitting at Richard at the table going, I don't have a good answer for you. We need to, if we could engage them younger, like Netflix would, we can start talking to them about retirement planning. If we can start meet Richard at a younger age and we can stop them from being bored. Now let's talk about what I perceive the problem to be. You can think about it yourself, but what are some of the principal things? I think we're doing exactly like the author said in that 403B article. We're doing information interventions. We're throwing a lot of information on the chalkboard and we're saying, here's the stuff you need to know about. And this is great information. I want to know that my financial advisor knows that, but I just don't necessarily want to know that. It's like looking at a clock and knowing how the clock works. I just want to know that the clock's telling the right time. In this world, we're showing them how the clock works and we're saying, this is your retirement plan. It's all more important information, but it's not important until they start participating. And if they're not participating, it becomes very boring information and you have meetings where they're disengaged. One of the advisors that uses our solution, excuse me, walks into the room with the participants and says to the participants, what's the most important part of your plan? And he hears from the participants. This is Jonathan Schulteis out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He gets told, they tell me fees, funds, and asset allocation, sometimes fiduciaries responsibility. And he says, those are important parts of your plan, but it's not the most important part of your plan. The most important part of your plan is, can I retire? He says, before you leave the room today, I'm going to answer that question for each of you. He says, people start sitting up and looking at me going like, really? You're going to do that? And all of a sudden they get engaged. All the other information is derivative from this. But when we can answer this question for the participants in a room, this engages them in a meaningful way. They go, yes, that's my retirement. I want to know where I'm at. And I've seen this over and over for 35 years. I've been working in the 403B world. We started in the early 2000s and addressing the 401k world. We compete with the websites. So you go out and visit the Record Keeper's website and take a look at where you're at. Well, the problem with going and visiting the portals is nobody's doing it. And when I go visit my portal and I'm in this world, I don't have confidence in what it's communicating to me. It's way too simplistic and it's not actionable. So you're being passive in the most important question that the participant has. Hey, go visit the portal, or let's do a meeting after I bore you with all of this. I'm going to bore you with this. Who'd like to meet with me now? Now that we made it really boring for them, we're going to say, hey, if you want to talk about this, come meet with me. But if we engage them right off the beginning and show them what can you do to retire? What does it look like? And what do you need to do in a very concrete way? And I'm going to address that. What does it mean to answer this question in a concrete way? We want to engage participants in the most meaningful, actionable way that we can. And we provide help you provide to your, in a number of ways. You can provide this to each participant in the room. Now, at the top, I've heard this, oh, everybody's seen that gap report. And I get that. We show them the money's going to last them about 15 years, and then they need to die. Or they need to figure out how to fund the rest of retirement. One of the key questions you can ask them is, how do you want to solve this problem? When you ask them how to solve a problem, all of a sudden they get engaged. And we're going to show a number of solutions down below. But all of a sudden they start to, well, I've got to solve this problem. Yeah, it's not my problem to solve. It's your retirement. And then down below, we're going to show them their current paycheck. And when they see their current paycheck, they go, wow, how did you do that? Now this is going to get close to maybe match their paycheck. We've been doing paycheck analysis for over 30 years. But now we're going to show them what most advisors show them. You're going from 4%, you need to go to 10.8. You need to go to about 11% of contribution level. Wow. What does that mean? I had one advisor recently when I was presenting, he said, yeah, somebody walked by me. I was on site at a plan sponsor site. They said, Alex, what does a 2% increase in my contribution mean to my take-home pay? And he couldn't answer the question. That's the most concrete question they can ask you. And most advisors have to punt. They said, I don't know, see what happens. But when we can show them, when we're talking about going from 4 to 10.8, they go, I don't know what that means. But down below, we're going to show them what it means in take-home pay. And we're going to show them that it's going to cost them $170 a paycheck. And people go, wow, that is my number. Wow, I can't afford that, but that's nice to know, would be your typical response. And then we're going to show them how to solve that different ways. I'm going to handle that objection. I can't afford it in just a moment. But I talked about a concrete way just a moment ago, concrete solution. This is them understanding it in terms of everyday living. It's going to cost you $170 a paycheck to fund your retirement. I don't know if I can afford that. Well, let's talk about what you can afford. And I'll do that. But we also don't want to put them in a corner. So down below this, we're going to give them other possible solutions. One of the key ones is wait a year. Don't do anything for a year. What happens? It goes from 10.8 to 11.3. So you have to spend more. The longer you wait, the more it costs. I want to show you what it costs to wait a year. Oh, well, I should do something. I can't afford 10.8. Let's talk about other solutions. Item B, retire a year later. Item C, if you have outside assets that are not in the fund that I don't know about, I didn't include those. So if you've got another 115,000, so if you've got a McKinsey or a Michael in the room, you've got people going, oh, this is really about me. I've got some outside assets. Let me talk to the advisor afterwards and have the ability to engage them in a meaningful retirement talk about their outside assets. So in a very engaged way, you're talking to McKinsey about our old 401k plan. Abstractly, hey, if you've got outside money, you're talking to Michael about that inheritance he just received. And in a way, in a one-page report, You've provided actionable, meaningful retirement information that they can go with. Now, what do you do with somebody who says, I can't afford, the typical objection is I can't afford the increase. I just can't afford 10.8%. And often if that's what you leave it with, then they won't do anything. They'll go, okay, I can't do anything. Well, it sucks to be, I can't retire. Well, let's talk about an actionable way to solve that. And the other one is Michael and Mackenzie, who have outside assets. We have a page you can include just the first page or both pages. It can be quite long if you want. I say keep it short. You can configure it, but we can show them how to connect. They're going to see their take-home pay illustrated in the report. They're going to go, hey, that's me right there. And then we're going to show them what do small steps mean towards retirement success. So a 1, 2, 3, 4% increase in contribution, an auto increase on the far right. But down below, we're going to show them the changes in contribution level. And most advisors leave it right here. And then down here, we're going to show them a change in take-home pay. That advisor that didn't answer the question, what does a 2% increase mean in your take-home pay? You couldn't answer the question. We can answer it here in an automated report. It's going to cost you $50. So very quickly, everybody in the room had that question answered. So can you take baby steps towards retirement success? Can you give up $25, $50, $75? One of the advisors that uses this, Bassam Malik, I have a video of this interview I did with him. Gerald said, come visit one of my advisors doing a participant meeting. So I flew out to Dearborn, Michigan, and went up and watched them do a participant meeting. And it was a great meeting. We have a videotape of it on our website. But I sat down with Bassam afterwards. I said, tell me a fun story, success story. He said, Ed, we were just in Chicago. He said, we use these two reports that you provide third year in a row. He said, first 2 years, we saw a significant increase in deferrals. We were very satisfied with the contribution levels in the plan. Third year, we thought we had tapped it out. We were satisfied. We weren't going to see increases. He said, but third year in a row, we saw significant increases in contribution. Why is that? Because people can step up at 25, 50, 75, maybe $100 a paycheck. They can give up a couple Starbucks and eating out once or twice, that 6-pack of the bottle, a pack once a week, maybe they give them up. But they can't afford to give up all of it at one bite. But if you give them the opportunity to take small steps towards retirement success, it's meaningful and actionable. So we can show them that. We can show them the values projected at retirement at various rates of return. You can include or exclude that. And you can show them what is it going to look like. So at a 3% increase in contribution, at a 6% pre-retirement rate of return, it's going to be $1.4 million. That's a sizable asset for most middle income Americans. You show them a little bit later, what does it cost to wait? 3% at 1 year? It's going to cost you $16,000 if you punt 1 year. Just want to let you know what you're leaving on the table if you decide, well, I'm just going to wait a little while. I can't afford it today. You can't afford not to do it today. And that's $75 a paycheck for 1 year is going to cost you $16,000. Can't push it off 2 years. It's more expensive, but a very nice complimentary report. Hey, I got a gap report for you, and I got a baby step report for you, showing you how to take baby steps towards retirement success. For the person that says I have outside assets, if you're doing one-on-one planning, we can literally provide very good one-on-one planning. You got most of the data in the plan, 5 minutes. I put 10 just to round it up in case you want to go into more detail, but very quickly we can show them where they're at. I love this chart showing somebody they're 87% funded. Most people would feel, hey, that's a B+. I was a C student. I'm doing really well. You counter with, that's a 13% in cut and pay. That's not a B grade. How do you feel about a 13% cut and pay? Let's talk about how you want to solve this problem. We can add outside assets. I can literally add it in 30 seconds. We're not doing a full financial plan. Let's add the assets, control the rates of return, show them where they're at, look at where they're doing, and say, how do we want to solve this problem? If you're in the 403B world at all, I know most of you aren't. Our history is 403B. We have 700 public pension plans. We were ranked MetLife Resources top sales tool. We've been a broker dealer top sales tool, insurance company top sales tool consistently because we show the information in an actual way. We have over 700 public pension plans. If you're a 401k person, so I don't care. That just tells you we've been around a while. We have a big commitment. We're actually recommended by the 403B arm of the American Retirement Association. I have a relationship with the executive director of them. And more complicated analysis, we're not going to do a full financial plan. We're not trying to compete with eMoney, Money Guide Pro. You can provide more complicated analysis as you're working with middle income in America. But as they're getting closer to retirement, you want to do a little bit more financial planning, but it's not quite an eMoney kind of situation. We can do more complicated analysis. Our focus is to keep you participant centric. Where are they at? Their most important question that they don't even know about. They're not even asking because they were told by the industry to worry about fees, funds, asset allocation, fiduciary rules. They were told to worry about the academic parts of the plan. Those are important parts. I actually absolutely agree. But their most important question is, can I retire? Derivative to that, but concrete to them is, what age can I retire? What is it? How does it affect my take-home pay? And then like maybe this year, what about inflation? So very quickly and understandable, what's longevity risk? You can start to address those as people get closer to retirement. How do we help advisors succeed? We help you engage the participant. You're going to find outside assets in the plan in a very natural way, where Michael and Mackenzie are coming to you afterwards going, I got outside assets. What do I do? Why do I know that's going to happen? Because advisor after advisor that uses us grows their assets and their existing plans. You're going to improve your plan sponsor retention. You're not trying to commoditize yourself, fight for lower fees, not worried about somebody coming in behind you. I'm going to share an audio with you in just a second. Gerald Wernette went into a hospital and shared the story with me. Went into a hospital. They didn't have an advisor before. He increased the fees on the plan. They're frustrated. He gets to the trustee meeting, first trustee meeting. Before he starts, one of the geeky trustees who's always worried about fees in the academic side said, Gerald, your fees are too high. I want you to lower them. Gerald says, hold on to your thought. And then he says, let me answer your questions. And if you want to hear this story from Gerald, it's on my podcast series. It's one of the best on the 403B my podcast.retireready.com. If you got a podcast app, it's under Grow Retire Ready Clients. And that trustee says to Gerald, after he shows him the education, which he uses our education tools, he calls it a cornerstone of what he does. He says, after the education, that same trustee says to him, he said, maybe sarcastically, he says, Gerald, I want to be sure your fees are high enough because I want you to stick around. Completely changing the dynamics of the conversation. When you are working with a plan sponsor who wants to engage their participants towards retirement success, wants them to feel confident, improving the participant's outcome keeps you around the plan. It's a lot of fun. You're delivering value. You own the data in the process and you're independent. I'm going to make the other point about this that's absolutely key. As you move closer to and you increase your AUM, the other part of this is as the participants get close to retirement, that record keeper is going to try to win them to their retail account. If you're working the retail side at all, when you work with the participants and you're engaging them, the highest assets people are the people moving into retirement, and you have the opportunity to keep them as clients because you're on their radar. You've helped them. You've established a relationship. They appreciate the value. You're not an abstract big box company trying to win the business, but they don't know better. This puts you on their radar, and you have the option of helping them retire well. Gerald Wernette, I told you a little bit about him. He's doing a great job. Always enjoy talking to him. I want to let you actually listen to his voice say about him, what he does, because he's doing a different education model, what he can do with fees.
Really presenting this right and the value that it can bring. We've actually been able to go in and raise fees rather than have to lower our fees to get the business.
We've actually been able to go in and raise fees rather than lower our fees because you're differentiating yourself with every advisor out there. Everyone's trying to commoditize themselves and fighting for the bottom fee market. When you're fighting to educate the participants, Gerald told a story on the podcast where he helped a lady who got divorced. She lost everything, thought she was going to have to work till she died. He found out she didn't. She actually cries in the meeting with him. And she's just elated. She's so happy. He said 2 weeks later after the podcast, he called me later. He said, I walked in and the plan sponsor came up to him and said, Gerald, the way you helped Mary just glowed. She glowed in here, and she changed the whole office dynamics because people are helping people retire well. Helping middle income America retire can not only be a rewarding one because you feel good about your business, but you can also make a really good income helping Americans retire well. And you can change the dynamics of the meeting. I mentioned before, record keepers. I wrote a story for the 401k specialist. Record keepers, you stand in line to earn their business, and they step right in the front of the line and say, get out of my way. I'm going to take this client from you. And it's really your client to keep, your opportunity to earn their business, and your opportunity when you're developing a relationship, when it's not just you and the plan sponsor, but you're really there proactively and you can do it efficiently. One of the advisors, I mentioned him earlier, Charlie Epstein of 401k Coach. I've earned more money from Track in the last 20 years than I've used in any other solution. I was at a presentation for him. He used this line right when I went up on the platform. And I thought, how do you improve on that? I've made more money from Track, which is our solution, the last 20 years than any other solution I've ever used. I say, don't leave money in the room. Don't leave money sitting on the table with people in there. You can increase your deferrals. Brian Heckert, he was the president on the life insurance side, the $1 Million Roundtable, which outstanding organization. Brian Heckert actually said he was charging plan sponsors more to do the education we provide. He says it was stupid. I was losing money by charging them more per participant than waiting and seeing the assets that would get rolled in the plan, because not everybody did it. So with that said, I'm glad to take any questions. Are there any questions that have come in, or if anybody have?
Okay. Are there any recommendations for cleaning up in advance so that you can have a clean report, I guess, for the plans report? I believe that's the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. So my email's on the screen. I don't understand that question.
Okay.
And that may have been for the prior speaker.
Not a problem. And as you know, there's a racial gap in retirement savings and a gap between women and men as well. Is there evidence that the type of plan engagement helps level the playing field?
Absolutely. I can only tell you anecdotally. We haven't done any studies. It's a little bit difficult. But you start talking to you present stuff not in an academic way. A lot of women, my wife included, hates numbers. She's having to take a math class right now, and it's stressing even the marriage. If you present it in an actionable way where they understand and take home pay, that's a number that they understand. I can't believe that it would make a difference. We've been working with teachers in the 403B world and had a lot of success, and that tends to be more female. So we know we're engaging them in a meaningful way. We took what we learned in the 403B world and applied it to the 401k world and have seen the same success. So I'd have to say yes. I couldn't provide you any more proof than that.
Not a problem. Ed, I appreciate it. Always great to hear your presentation.
It's always a pleasure to present. If anybody wants to reach out to me, retireready.com. It's Dressel, like well-dressed, but an EL on the end at retireready.com. I'll help you increase your sales and help America retire well. Thank you, Ari.
Appreciate it. Next, but not not least, because we have a couple more presentations. Chad Azera. Chad, you there?
I'm here.
Yes, a good fan of the Cleveland Guardians. It's going to take me about 20 years to remember that they're named the Guardians and not the Indians anymore. But
Yeah, I'm holding on to hope that one day I'll change back, but I don't know.
we'll see what happens. So Chad, take it away.
Let me try to share my screen. All right, is that working?
I don't see anything yet.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate the time today, Ari, and I appreciate the relationship and being involved in this. I'm going to talk about differentiating yourself from other advisors, which seems to be a common theme today, and I agree with James and Ed that that is a key to success in this business.
I'd put on there, don't let rec keepers stand in your way. We are a rec keeper, but we're a little bit different than your big box providers. We want you to, build your own brand. We're not looking to enhance our brand in the marketplace. We're looking to enhance your brand and your services, and the plan sponsor clients and participants are yours. A lot of other providers in space will, they want to take a lot of the business, and they provide a lot of the same services that you do as an advisor, and that they're building their brand. The other thing I want to point out is when you're going in a competitive situation, you want to go in something unique, and that is partnering with the Millenniums and Ed's firm and other firms in your local TPA, that can differentiate yourself from somebody going in with the same bundled service provider that you can use too. So differentiating yourself is a key to success. So what we do and what my role is really at the firm is a little bit different. So I've been at PCS for a little over 6 years. I started off as the national sales manager. My role now is more of strategic sales. What that means is I reached out to other institutions and other rec keepers, honestly, and financial services firms that want to provide a private or a white labeled solution, whether that be if they're currently a rec keeper and the space is very competitive, and there's only so many rec keeping software systems in the marketplace. We've enhanced ours to a point where it differentiates our services versus others. So my role is to go out and work with those firms that want to stay in the rec keeping space. So we basically white label for them, and we also work with big financial services firms. I also I showed E-Trade on there. They're Axos now. We white label their services and others. But we can provide that same type of labeling or co-branding for you as an individual advisor. So we can partner on 401k plans, 403b plans, 407s. We do HSAs. We have transparent flat fee pricing. We work with approximately 500 TPAs across the U.S. We offer 316 services, but we also partner with firms like James and Millennium, who offer their 316 services. We are CFEX certified and been named best in retirement by Schwab the last time they had a conference. So again, product suite that meets your own needs, so you don't have to necessarily go to different providers. Obviously you can, but if you want a branded or co-branded offering that differentiates yourself in your local marketplace, then we can offer all those services for you. Again, we're here to build your brand. We don't lead with the PCS retirement brand. We can co-brand everything from the website to the mobile app to participant statements, to retirement plan brochures and engagement emails that we send out. So outside of the branding and creating your own brand, we have somewhat unique tools that we've created for acquisition. So we have the Advisor Lab, which is a end-to-end suite that you can have access to. There's no cost for it. It is sort of like a Judy Diamond or a Larkspur front end. So we get our own feed into the DOL database. So we download monthly all the plans that follow 5500, and you can run a benchmarking, a comparison proposal, and then enrollment guides and things on on that in that nature once a plan's onboarded. But again, with the benchmarking, what we do is we benchmark based on the 5500 data. If you can get a participant statement or a 40485 fee disclosure, we'll pull in the investment information, and we have, you know, we get feeds from Morningstar. We'll benchmark the investments for you too. But again, the plan finder, you know, we'll go in and you can search by your zip code. You can search by certain size plans. You can if you were, you know, looking to go after potentially a you know, certain provider that is maybe struggling, you can do that also, whether it be a record keeper or a financial services firm that is like another advisor that maybe is having some issues. Then you can type that in there, and if it's on the 5500, then those that information will be pulled up, and you can download it to an Excel file. Again, the diagnostic is the benchmarking report. Again, it's easy to understand and communicate to plan sponsors. It's honestly really well put together. It benchmarks the returns, participation, utilization rate, and the funds if you have the funds. And it tells you where they are currently in over a 3 to 5 year period. We benchmark based on their industry code and also their plan size, plus or minus 10% participants, and the asset size. So it really gives you a good understanding of where the plan you know, is at. And then we'll benchmark the fees based on the 5500 data. This really is meant for the first meeting with a client or potential client. And once you sit down and say, hey, listen, you know, this is what I can pull from the publicly available data. You know, can I get your plan fee disclosure before AB2? And then we can run a efficiency analysis, which really is a side-by-side comparison of where the plan is today and where it could be with yours and our offering, or, you know, it could be obviously combined offering with an outside TPA and outside 316 also. And then again, you can run a proposal on demand, and your logo and brand and information about you is all in the proposal.
Yeah, I just want to interrupt. We're not seeing the slides.
Oh, you're not seeing the slides?
Yeah.
Oh.
You got to go to share screen, because I see you reading from the slides and people are like in the chat. I'm like,
Okay, let me.
are reading from slides, and that I can tell.
Let me try this.
Now we go. Okay.
Let me see here. Hold on a sec.
You got to go to, I guess, the view.
Is that better or no?
That's better. Now we see it.
Okay. Well, well, I'll go back real quick, but you know, we have the Advisor Lab, you know, just from a few things through the Advisor Lab, so you can see what it looks like. You have access to it, the plan finder, the diagnostic report, the RPEA, and then the proposal. And then we offer investments that can differentiate. So we're open architecture. We are truly conflict-free and independent. We have over 25,000 funds. We are a big ETF shop, so we have a lot of plans with ETFs on our platform. No proprietary fund or revenue sharing requirements. No investment or share classes, and we do dollar for dollar offset of any revenue sharing, if there is any. And we have availability to self-directed brokerage accounts. So we have that TD, Schwab, Fidelity, and actually a whole host of others if that's an issue. So again, differentiating yourself, we have an investment management center. So if you offer individual models on your wealth management side, and you want to offer those same types of models on in your retirement plans, your retirement plan clients, you can do that. So whether that be target dates or risk balance or you can offer those models on our platform. We designate the models as DIAs, so you don't have to have the individual funds or ETFs in the actual lineup. If you just want to offer models, you can do that, and you can manage your models on our platform across all your business. So if you have 30 plans with us, 50 plans with us, you can reallocate, add or remove funds, and it goes across all your plans. You're not having to go in and manually update models one by one, which is a nice feature for those that offer models. So there's that. There is managed accounts also. So we have two types of managed accounts. So we have and managed accounts are growing tremendously in the marketplace. There's the participant level 338 offering, PRA. So that takes the lineup of the plan. Right now we have that through Russell Investments, and we have it offered through Morningstar. We're adding Pro Invest and others here shortly. And Fisher, I think, is the next one. But they take the lineup of the plan and they allocate it based on different factors, more factors, 5 or 6 different factors based on the participants' actual personal situation versus just looking at target dates and based on their age. We also have what's called managed plan, where you can access different investment managers such as BlackRock and American funds that offer their managed accounts through Envestnet and other on Envestnet platform. So these are unique, that nobody else in the marketplace actually offers these managed accounts in retirement plans. So there's different ways again to differentiate yourself. And as you're out there in the marketplace, another differentiator, and this honestly is a huge benefit to closing business and helping plan sponsors make a decision. It is the payroll integration. So we integrate with about 45 different payroll providers. It says 30 on there, but it's up to 45 today. That is a huge stumbling block for a lot of plans moving, especially if you're going after the ADP and Paychex plans, that we integrate with these providers. You can talk to a CFO and they could be sold and they want to move the plan, but the person that runs payroll and does the HR may not want to move because it's integrated with their payroll provider. Given that we integrate with like 45 of them, that is a differentiator again in the marketplace. We do integrate with wealth management platforms, and I think as of today, we're the only provider that does that. We integrate with Black Diamond, Envestnet, and then it's not coming soon anymore. We do integrate with Orion. So any individual participants in the plan can be ported over to your wealth management system. So if you want to manage the individual participants in the plan and their money and outside money, you can sit down and have the information from the PCS system imported into your wealth management platform. We also integrate from a compliance standpoint with Envestnet, RPAG, and FI360. So once the plan's on board, we do also, this is a differentiator, the annual plan review and benchmarking report. So this basically protects you from other providers going in and saying, hey, let me benchmark your plan, because we do that for you on the annual basis. And we pull, again, from the 5500 database, we pull from Morningstar, Lipper, And everything you ever want to know about your retirement plan is going to be in this plan review and benchmarking report. So it actually protects you from others, trying to benchmark against you. Last but not least, we have the Communication Resource Center. This allows you to communicate with your participants. So if you're having a webinar on, what the difference between Roth and traditional are in a 401k or IRAs, or if you're just you're having, a general financial education webinar, or you're coming out to meet, you can email all the participants in the plan through our Communication Resource Center, and have that active communication with them, so you don't necessarily have to download their emails, put them in whatever service you're using, and send those out. So in summary, we want to help build your brand. We want to be able to partner with you and others, support you in this space. We offer fully bundled record-keeping or record-keeping only services and no proprietary investments. Again, we are not a household name, but we're not a small firm. This is as of last year, 2020, we were at 28 billion. We're closer to 30 now, and closer to almost 1 million participants. So that's it. I appreciate the time. Apologize that my slideshow wasn't showing at the beginning, but if there's any questions, just let me know.
And I appreciate it. I hope to see you soon, eventually, one of these days at one of these events. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. How was Vegas?
Great. We had a great guest. Spencer Haywood was fantastic. Attendance on the lower side, but that's been what's been going on since we came back live in September. Like I always joke, every single time we schedule an event, there's going to be a new variant. So we'll see what happens in April. And, June in Miami, and October for Charlotte. So hopefully we get an event going for September and November. I was plotting New Orleans. We'll see what happens. And, as long as we get sponsors and attendees, and hopefully we'll be out of this soon. But, after 6 weeks, it's been 2 years almost. We'll see what happens. Next on our list, Peter Hibbard, CBC Retirement Partners. Peter, you there?
I'm here.
You can share the screen and take it away.
Will do. Okay, you see the screen here?
It's just said you got it. It's on.
Well, I titled this Confessions and Transformation of a Pension Geek. And basically what the phases I've gone through is, since I started in the pension business in 1974, is saving pre-tax the best? And the answer back there was yes, because you're all going to retire in a lower tax bracket. So let's take the tax section now. Then in 1997, when Roth came out, maybe having a Roth component of your savings, maybe that's even a better deal. And then in 2015, I went back to yes, because because we had Roth and some life insurance products were maturing in the index UL, and now you can have the best of both worlds. And what I mean by that is you can take the tax deductions up front in DB/DC plans, and then turn that money income tax free using our STAR strategy, which STAR stands for Save Taxes and Retire. Or if you're a little bit more common like I am, Screw Taxes and Retire, which is a system where you sequentially reposition qualified plan assets and traditional assets into tax-free environment. And this is the problem we're all facing right here. Let me get this out of the way here. Marginal tax brackets have been high at times. The highest brackets today are 37 and going to 39.6. And the other problem is our demographics. We got 78 million baby boomers, of which 50% are still retiring at the rate of 10,000 retiring reaching age 65 every day. The four largest budget items is Social Security, Medicare, defense, and believe it or not, the interest we pay on our national debt is the fourth largest expense of our government. And right now, each of us are indebted 89,000 per citizen and over almost $250,000 per taxpayer. But I think here's the bigger problem, that Social Security workers to beneficiaries used to be, when it started, 42 to 1. Today it's 3 to 1. And in 10 years, there's going to be 2 workers for every one receiving. So I think, in my view, I think taxes have to go up because Congress only has 2 choices, cut spending or increase taxes. And my guess, and which one do you think is more probable? As an example, it's just focusing on Social Security. This, as more baby boomers hit Medicare and Social Security, you can see by 2026, we're going negative. And there's 78 million baby boomers that can vote, so I'm not so sure that benefits are going to get reduced. I think the taxes are going to have to go up. Those who don't know who I am, this is my firm. I have 3 firms, CBC Retirement Partners, which is a Mid-Atlantic open architecture record keeper. Columbia Advisory Group is our RIA run by my son-in-law that is to the left of my old man picture up there. And the CBC Financial, which is the estate insurance and executive benefits, which with my son Jamie on the right. And the lovely lady there is Jody Daly, who's worked with me for 34 years. I'm a 67 graduate of Rutgers University and a former Marine Corps infantry officer, having served in Vietnam. And upon leaving the Marine Corps, I've written some other books here with Jack Canfield and Brian Tracy. But I often accuse some of the advisors I work with of unintended hubris, excessive pride or self-confidence in how they're advising clients for retirement. And this is one of my favorite quotes of all time: be careful of following the masses because sometimes the is silent. Now, this is the common advice that all advisors give regarding pre-tax money. If you need the money, well, spend it. That's taxable. But if you can limit your withdrawals to RMDs, that's taxable. You can do a Roth conversion, that's taxable. If you don't need the money, well, tough tacos, you still got to take the money unless you give it away to charity, which is a spoiled alert for kids and grandkids. Or we used to be able to consider a stretch IRA, stretch that money out over multiple generations. But whoops, the CARES Act of 2019 eliminated stretch for everyone except spouses and a few other special beneficiaries. But I often ask business owners, and you should ask a business owner, would you do this voluntarily? Would you start a business with a silent partner where you own 60% of the business, your silent partner owns 40%? You're the employee and the capital provider. You got to put 100% of the capital in. Your silent partner puts nothing in. You get 60% of the money coming out, and it's taxable. And your silent partner gets 40% of the money. And by the way, your silent partner can change his percentage ownership at any time that they wish. Would you do that in the real world? And there's not one business owner I've ever asked that question to. It's yeah, I'd do that. Well, that's what you're doing with $25 trillion of our American money. And too many advisors say, oh, it's just tax. There's nothing you can do about it. And this is a quote from Robert Kiyosaki's book that I kind of took to heart here. So rather than saying it's automatic, it's no question it's taxable, maybe you ought to think about, well, maybe there's a way around that. Can I mitigate the tax? And this is what started me down this. In 1976, his book came out. George Cooper was an economics professor for Columbia University. And he did a study of the DuPont family in an era where the estate tax was as high as 77%. And he couldn't figure out, or wanted to figure out, why the DuPont family was passing wealth generation to generation at maybe a 4 or 5% tax drag rather than 70%. And the total conclusion was the reason why many people can pay less in taxes and transfer more wealth to family is those who are indifferent to the taxpayer indifference and poor advisors who don't have the knowledge, tools, and skills to implement. And so my question came up, well, if that's true of estate taxes, my question in 1976 was, why the hell is that not true to some degree to estate income taxes? And, you know, you can find some quotes out there, but Judge Learned Hand said, there's no obligation to pay more than the tax code requires. It's not your patriotic duty to do that. So I've asked many clients, are you prepared for tax and financial abandonment when you hit retirement? Because the word theirs is the IRS. And this has been me over the 50 some years I've been in the business. I've been constantly trying to learn new tricks and evolve as the American economy and taxes evolve. So all of us need to learn new tricks as we get older and get longer of tooth in this industry, in this business. And therefore, I spent a lot of time developing this a mountain of tax efficiency, where as you do more of these things climbing up this mountain, the more tax efficient your contributions become, and perhaps the more efficient your tax distributions become by using these different tools and techniques. And this, you'll see at the top, is the STAR strategy, where I think it's probably the most tax efficient there is. So what is the focus of the STAR strategy? The focus is to remove the income tax burden, and in many cases, the estate tax burden on two types of assets: those in the tax deferred bucket, which is your 401k, profit sharing, IRA, cash balance plans, et cetera, and assets in your taxable bucket. So the STAR strategy completely removes income and the estate tax burden, the results of the STAR strategy, from your qualified retirement plan assets. And many of the clients I present this to say that's too good to be true. But we can also reposition a portion of your personal assets so that they are neither required to pay any tax on the interest, dividends, and capital gains. But there's some other side benefits that I won't go into today, but the STAR strategy reduces or eliminates longevity risk, taxation risk, market risk, order of return risk, having losses in that 5 to 10 years before and after retirement, dying too soon, or you're suffering from long-term care problems and you need additional resources, and inflation. So it addresses these kinds of issues also, in addition to the income and estate tax burden on these qualified plan assets. So the benefits and the advantage of the STAR strategy is we can increase your after-tax retirement income. We can also increase your net worth. We can increase your wealth to heirs. And if you're so inclined, we can also increase the money you may choose to leave to charity, or some combination of the above. So the first step is a qualified plan must be amended, or a new plan must be established that allows for the purchase of a life insurance policy inside the participant's accounts. Your first fly in the ointment is having an ERISA team or a TPA that can actually handle the reporting of the life insurance in the qualified plan. Now, we work a lot with not only my own firm, but the Alliance Benefit Group that has the capability to do that, and other TPAs also have the capability to do that. So that's the first step in the stumbling block, is having somebody to work with that can help you get this implemented. But life insurance, really, isn't life insurance a terrible asset? Well, if you've ever heard of Ed Slott in almost all of his presentations talks about the value of life insurance for estate planning and income planning. And he now calls life insurance the new stretch IRA. And so we've taken that to heart and put it into a lot of our retirement plans. And this is how hard it is to do. If you have a typical IRS volume submitter plan, this box is normally not checked. The plan may invest in life insurance at the option of the participant, because we never force anybody to do this. Any participant can take advantage of this, even though our target market for our firm is the larger account balances, but any participant can do this without any limitations by having the right plan language. And that's the first step, is having a plan documents that allow you to do this. So here's our value proposition. We were going to redefine, and so I'm hoping that many advisors who are listening to this may want to figure out what their value proposition is. Are you bringing better ideas to the client than your competition? And so all of our clients have potentially 3 buckets of money. Obviously, most of their money is in the first 2 buckets. The taxable bucket, that's all your personal investments, CDs, real estate, stocks and bonds, et cetera. Then you have the tax deferred bucket, which is all your money in IRAs, 401ks, and those qualified plan accounts. And then a few of you have money in the muni bonds, perhaps life insurance, in the tax-free bucket. So our goal And our value proposition is to begin to move more of that money out of the first two buckets into the third bucket. But let's talk about the taxation of these buckets. What's the taxable nature of each bucket? And this is sometimes the hardest part for clients to understand. Let's talk about the taxable bucket. That's all your personal investments. All your earnings are taxable for life. And what I mean by that is you may have a bucket of post-tax money, but you got it invested in everything that it earns on it. All of the dividends, interest, capital gains, all the things you earn on it, the things that give you K1s at the end of the year. All that is taxable, even though the money that you're building or earning money on is your post-tax money. And the question I want to ask you is, this money that you have in this pre-tax or taxable bucket, can you convert that to Roth? No, you can't, because the only money you can convert to Roth is money that's in your qualified plan accounts. So the other bucket of money is your tax deferred bucket, your 401k, and all distributions, everything you put into that and everything you've earned that come out of every nickel, dime, and penny for the rest of your life is taxable as ordinary income. And then you have the tax-free bucket, which most people don't have a lot of assets there, if any. And that's your life insurance Roth, where all your distributions and benefits are income tax-free for life. Now, in all three of these buckets, I emphasize for life. The money in your taxable bucket is taxable for life. The money in your qualified plan bucket is taxable for life. The money in that third bucket is income tax exempt for life. So the first step, and I'm going to walk through the steps of implementing the STAR strategy by sequentially repositioning. See, I use those terms sequentially because you're going in order in a sequence of repositioning money. Okay, step number one is in the tax deferred bucket. We're going to have our client buy life insurance in the retirement account with their seasoned money. So that's step one. So we fund that policy with money in that participant's account. Step two is that we need to move that money out. Well, how do we do that? And I'll talk about the legality of that in a minute, but we remove that insurance policy from the qualified plan by sale. And sometimes we use distribution. We'll talk about that later, but we sell that policy from the qualified plan to you personally, which is effectively moving that life insurance policy out of the qualified plan to a tax-free bucket. But you have to pay for that. If you buy anything, you have to pay for it. So we use these personal assets here to go into the qualified plan bucket as the purchase price, and the life insurance policy comes out to you or your ownership. Now, I'll also talk about who's the buyer of that policy. The buyer can be you, or it can be a trust on your behalf if it's an estate planning play. And the third step in this is once that personal money is in the qualified plan bucket as the purchase price, step three is to use those personal assets and convert that to Roth. So I'm going pretty quick here, but what I'm talking about is this summary is step one, buy the life insurance in a qualified plan. Step two, use your personal assets to buy that policy out if you have them. If you don't, we have a solution to that. And step three is convert that money that you bought the policy out with to Roth. And of course, there's a Roth conversion evaluation that is required once you decide to do the Roth conversion. Do you do it immediately or do you do it over time? So this is the net result is we've significantly moved a lot of money on the taxable bucket, the tax deferred bucket into the tax-free bucket. These are your best candidates for this. Business owners, particularly physicians in the age bracket of 50 to 70. Although I just have a case right now, it's got $14 million. It's a 76-year-old, $14 million in qualified plan money. They're tired of RMDs, and we're talking about converting 7 million of that under this strategy. Now you can do this with any size accounts. We tend to focus on these larger accounts because of the time and effort goes into these. We want to make sure we're being paid for our time and knowledge. And we want to deal with those people who have pre-tax accounts, tax deferred accounts in IRAs, 401ks, and we'll consolidate all that into one retirement plan so we can maximize the benefits they can get. The advisor who wants to get involved in this market has to have a couple pieces of knowledge. One is you have to know how modern life insurance products are designed and put together and managed. And you have to know how life insurance is administered in a qualified plan. And if not, then you can bring us in to help you on that strategy. This is why it works. This is the technical side of it. STAR works because there's two revenue procedures that, and I'll cover the one on the right first, the Department of Labor prohibited transaction exemption 92-6. That prohibited transaction exemption says, and this is the only asset in a qualified plan you can do this with, And it's a class exemption. What class exemption means for the DOL is that any retirement plan in this country in which the participant has a life insurance policy and their qualified plan may remove that policy by sale or distribution. Let's talk about sale. So they can sell that policy and it's not a privileged transaction. And the other side of the goal here is what's the price of that? You know, the insurance industry is famous for doing monkeying around with policy values and springing cash value, and the IRS got tired of that and other tools and tricks they tried to put out there. And then we have this IRS revenue procedure 2005-25, which is a safe harbor for pricing a policy. Not only for pricing a policy that comes out of a qualified plan, but if you're selling a policy or you're transferring a policy into a trust, we now have a black and white letter law and how to value that policy, married with the Department of Labor regulation that says we can take that policy out without it being a privileged transaction. So we have over time have developed 3 versions of the STAR strategy. As we found out more and more about the financial underpinnings of our clients, many of them had money, personal money, and qualified plan money where they could use that money to buy the policy out once it's funded. And we called that the STAR goal. That's the standard. But then we began to run into people who had nice money in the qualified plan, but didn't have any personal money to buy the policy out. And so we developed a STAR Silver, where we only deal with the qualified plan money under the STAR strategy. But then we have some other clients. In fact, I'm going to show an example of a case we just finished where the client was wealthier and had a lot of personal money that he could buy the policy out plus do some other things, and could qualify for bank financing. So we married the STAR Gold with a premium finance strategy we call our prestige strategy to bring another set of benefits to the table. So this is what the STAR Gold, Silver, and Platinum are looking for. Is the STAR Gold is 2 buckets of money, and they control or influence a qualified plan. The STAR Silver, they only have 1 bucket of money. They don't have the personal money, and they also control the plan. And the STAR Platinum, where we're converting the 2 buckets and enhancing it with additional money coming from the banks into the policy. So let me give you a quick example. Here's a client who has $1.8 million in his qualified plan. This is the case we just are completing. 57-year-old participant. He has $1.8 million in his qualified plan. He actually has a lot more than that. He's got money over in ESOP, et cetera. Got $1.8 million. And so we're going to use that $1.8 million at the rate of $600,000 a year for 3 years. We're going to put into the policy. And at the end of 3 years, that will insure him for $6.5 million. The death benefit is $6.5 million. But we want to buy that policy out. So we estimate the purchase price of that policy, excuse me, is to be about $1.5 million. So we will use the $1.5 million to buy the policy out once it's fully funded after the end of 3 years. And so this is the net result. The 3 things that most clients are important and interested in is what's my spendable income if I don't do this and if I do the strategy. And if I spend this money in retirement, what's that leave? How's that impact my net worth? And then when I pass away, what's left over for the family? So in this case, this individual retired at 60, will retire at 66. They could have $212,000 tax-free from the STAR strategy. Now we run all of our numbers to age 100, but I can only get 40 lines on this page. So at age 96, he can have 6.5 million from our strategy, which is almost over $1.5 million more than the status quo. Now these numbers on these pages are all net after tax, assuming a 40% tax bracket. But the more important thing is at age 89, if he doesn't embrace our strategy, the likelihood is if he spends $212,000 and has reasonable rates of return on this money, he'll run out of money. Whereas you can see at age 89, we still have a net worth of 2.8 million in our STAR strategy. And at age 96, it got still 2.3 million of liquid assets. And then over on the right is the wealth going to the heirs when they pass away. So it's simply ask a client, which stream of income and net worth and income would you like? And now this is going on. This is a situation for those clients who has no personal liquid assets to buy the policy out. So we will still fund that $6.5 million policy over 3 years at the rate of $600,000 per year. and a $6.5 million death benefit. So focusing just on this asset, and all of our studies are just focusing on the most tax efficient way of using the qualified plan assets. And if they have the personal assets, what's the most tax efficient way of addressing that? So with just that qualified plan money of $1.8 million, he can have 110,000 a year all the way to age 100. Whereas if he doesn't do that, he runs out of money at age 88. But look at our net worth and wealth to heirs. We still have almost $2 million of net worth in our STAR strategy, and over $2 million of going to the heirs at passing. And then we get to the STAR Platinum, where we have a client who has not only the $1.8 million in the qualified plan, and the STAR Platinum is what this particular client elected to do, but he's got some pretty significant personal assets that we can use to buy the policy and pay if we borrow money to fund the policy. But let me explain this. Now, this policy is 14 million rather than $6 million. And you can see that we fund the policy at 900,000 over the first 2 years. So 900,000, we've put the whole $1.8 million in the qualified plan into the insurance policy over a 2-year period. And then we buy that policy out. But once we bought it out, then we also put another $900,000 a year for the next 5 years, years 3 through 7, from our bank partners who will then fund that policy. So we're actually putting about $6.3 million into that insurance policy. Now, he does have some interest that he has to pay to the bank, which is in that $2.5 million, $2.2 million cash that we're going to use to fund both the buy the policy out and pay the bank on interest that we borrow money to fund the additional premiums into the policy. But look what it does to the income. It takes that income, that $1.8 million income, up to $264,000 tax-free for the rest of his life, all the way to age 100. Whereas if he doesn't do the strategy on those two assets, 2.2 million of personal and 1.8 in a qualified plan, he runs out of money at age 89. Now, I also included another column here that many clients, we run into some clients who say, screw that insurance thing. It's not a good thing. Let's just do a Roth conversion. What does that do for me? Well, every time we do a Roth study, just taking the $1.8 million, converting it to Roth over immediately or over time, will basically buy generally another 2 to 3 or 4 years of more income. So Roth is effective, but not nearly as effective as our strategy, because when we get out here to net worth, let's say this guy passed away at age 89. It had the same income from the Roth, but our net worth is 4.2 million versus 1.2 for the Roth and 0 for the don't do it strategy. Whereas the wealth to heirs is 5.5 million versus 1.2 for the Roth and 0 for the don't do it strategy. So I've gone through this fairly quickly. And I'll open it for any questions that there might be out there.
There's a couple.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it up here.
Let me see the open. Our country is far from perfect, but isn't tax a relatively reasonable membership fee for our very lucky membership in arguably the world's best country? And isn't the real problem of the membership fee calculation needs to be rethought? It's more of a tax question,
That's a philosophical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's less. We can always argue, but the fact is, as you say, marginal rates are going to go up. That's the reality of it, I think, in the
Right.
future, and that's
Yeah.
If we are able to trump the IRS, pay little nothing by hook or by crook, would that really be better on any of us in the long run? Of course, in the long run, we're all dead. So what the hell? Okay, that's again, that's a philosophical question, and we could argue all day about the debt, as you point out. 80 something thousand dollars per individual, 200 something thousand dollars per taxpayer.
Right.
Mike Webb asks, are wealthy people who only have access to a 403b plan ineligible for STAR, since 403bs can no longer purchase life insurance, though they can purchase annuity contracts? If they are ineligible for STAR, are there comparable alternatives to such individuals?
Well, first of all, they're not ineligible for STAR. We do this for our rank and file employees. Now, obviously, I gave you the example of a very well-to-do individual, but we get somebody in their 30s or 40s. We say, just sock away as much money as you can until you get into your 50s, and then your 50s, you may only have a couple 100,000, 300,000, but even at that level, turning the star on at that time is much better for them than the alternative of not implementing the star. So although I apologize, and maybe I should have given you a more common example of somebody who doesn't have the kind of money that I showed in this example, but this star strategy, and there's another side to that too that you need to focus on, is that most Americans are underinsured. If something happens to them, we just had an employee in one of our plans that we're just taking over pass away about 4 months ago, and the family got almost nothing in death benefits. So we use the insurance as a bond alternative, because the insurance policies actually earn more today than bond accounts do. So we use bond alternative, and then we show them the star strategy that they can implement when they get into their 50s and have more income, more net worth, and more wealth to heirs at any level of compensation, any level of account balances. Which is why when I showed you the check mark of how to the language you need in a qualified plan, we don't force any participant to do this, but it's available for any participant. That's the key.
Exactly. Okay. That's it for the questions. So Peter, I appreciate it. As always, saw you in Las Vegas last week. It was always great to see you finally live and in person.
Yeah, thanks.
And hope to see you soon.
I hope to see you again soon, and thanks for all the work you do for us. I really appreciate your knowledge and efforts.
Yeah, whenever you get a chance, send me those cases for that memo.
Yes. Yeah.
Last but not, first of all, we're gonna do this live again next year. We'll get a date sometime in January. These seem to be a lot of fun and gives people the alternatives. Seeing more speakers than we traditionally have in the live events. So we will certainly do this again virtually again next year. We'll get a date, probably same time next year. I guess it's the 28th or 29th or whatever it is, or we'll see what happens. I'll book it. You will see it on that 401ksite.com very, very shortly. Last but not least, our friends at NS Capital. They are in the PEP space. Quite interesting, and they are doing some quite interesting stuff in the PEP space. I talked about it yesterday, the challenges of setting up PEPs, and they are offering a PEP and working with other plan providers. So guys, Joe, you there?
I am here. I was just waiting on Lou to get in there.
Not a problem.
Bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, we are running a couple of minutes early, which is, traditionally what we do at my events.
Yes. So
I
bear
always,
with me.
I run a tight ship, when I was in Vegas and Spencer Haywood, I ran a tight ship, and I'm like, let's get this going and whatnot. So again, because I have to constantly shill that 401ksite.com for further information on all our live events, as well as articles and whatnot, and blog posts and all that kind of stuff. Of course, again, Phoenix Diamondbacks, April the 8th, looks like it's going to happen. I think within the week, we'll have an agreement with the Major League Baseball players and the owners. And June 24th, Miami, Lone Depot Park. I think the April the 8th game with the Diamondbacks may be against the Padres. We'll see. June 24th, I certainly know that it's going to be against my Mets. And again, October, I believe that's on 14th, we'll be at Bank of America Stadium. That is the Carolina Panthers Stadium. Hopefully they'll turn it around as a team. And of course, we'll look to booking events for early June, hopefully Yankee Stadium, we'll see. And in September, it hopefully will be Seattle. And again, if things can be where we can run 2 events in September, hopefully this, there won't be another variant. We'll see what happens. And you guys on?
Yeah, we're,
Lou, you on?
I'm here. Yep, guys, ready to go?
Perfect.
Okay.
Take it
Eric,
away.
okay, let me see what we can do. All right,
Yep, screen two.
all right. Okay, I gotta get rid of this stuff. All right. Okay, all right, didn't work, Eric.
Nope,
we have to start the show, play from beginning.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
there it is. Okay, great. Okay, all right, good. All right, is everybody, are we, Ari, can you see this?
I can see it. NS Capital Pooled Employer 401k Plan Partnership. The
Okay.
Unity 401k.
All right, great. Okay, we'll go through this. Guys, let me tell you that, I listened very carefully to Ari's introduction yesterday and his comments about PEPs. And pretty much in total agreement with it. There's been a lot of press on this stuff. And as Ari and I have discussed, and he knows, this is not a slam dunk, for the people that are saying that they're going to go out and create their own PEP and put a lot of people in and stuff like that, which we've gone through this. And I think I can share that there's two things that are going on. Number one, it's a lot more difficult than we ever anticipated it was going to be. I can tell you that, and I'll answer questions on that as we go. And the other thing is, and Ari's exactly right on this, is the other PEPs that are being created by the major players, the insurance companies and Fidelity and stuff like that. They're all being created with an eye to make sure they don't cannibalize their book. And there also is a lot of third-party vendors in here that are uppricing these things because people will not take on the responsibility for the 338 fiduciary nor the 316. So I just share that with you and we can answer some questions. What we've done, guys, is, and this may or may not appeal to the audience at large, but we've said that this is a hard thing to do, so we're creating a partnership concept to work with RIAs. And the idea really is it probably will appeal to people that are not yet in the business, but are considering going into the business. It will also appeal to firms that are in the business right now, but have a lot of small plans that are taking up a lot of administrative work, and they'd like to monetize. And that's the group, so we can talk about it. So I'll go through this quickly, and we can talk about it. But the opportunity that we're talking about is the opportunity to bolt on a new business line in your 401k practice. Now, this data was interesting. It was put together in 2019, and this was all the reasons, and you guys know this, why a 401k business is a good business, all right? And what they're saying is that you get stronger client relationships. 87% of the time, you'll get referrals from your 401k clients. You get wealth management leads, and averaging about 5 wealth management leads from 401k sponsors that go to the wealth management space, and it's a diversified revenue source. And this estimates that $74 billion of contributions were generated by plans that had fewer than 100 participants, and that equates to an awful lot of money for the advisors that are selling those plans. Now, the other thing, cross-selling has been talked about in our industry forever, okay? And the 401k space is really an exception where it actually works. Some data about NS Capital. We entered the business in 2013. It took us 2 years to build it and get traction. Since then, 35% of our wealth management clients came from our 401k clients, and 25% of our 401k plans came from wealth management clients. So about 40% of the firm's total revenue is from the 401k. So this cross-selling has worked very well for us. These are the industry facts. Ari's been over these a lot, I'm sure, but there's 500,000 plus plans. It's over $7 trillion in assets now. It's 85% are below 50 million. And this is the area that the DOL and the Secure Act is trying to clean up. And right now, this is dominated by brokerage, mutual fund, insurance, and payroll companies. And these are the major players. These are the players that dominate the space. And it should come as no surprise that they're also the most expensive players. Now, this is a benchmark that we use in our benchmarking process. This is a checklist. And what I'm showing here is basically this is a very typical result of a benchmark for the players I just showed you, these big insurance companies, mutual fund companies. So what it is, green is something that is good, all right? And yellow is something that requires attention, and red is something that requires action. And as you see here, the state of the small plan market, these are bad plans, okay? And the liability risk, for the sponsor is significant, okay? And there's been a 5-fold increase, okay, in litigation in the past year alone. So everything in red there represents a breach of fiduciary duty for that sponsor. So this is what, obviously, I think the fact that retirement is not working in the country is really what led to the Secure Act, passed on a bipartisan basis, okay? Very unusual for that to happen. So the act was passed to address the fact that 401k plans, particularly in the small market, are just not getting the job done, okay, for companies and their employees. So the big thing that came out of it, and I already talked about this yesterday, was the pooled employer plan, which is just a new version of the MEP that's been around since ERISA passed in the 70s. But it was specifically designed really for the small and mid-sized companies to help them do a better job in banding together to gain scale and leverage and to improve their 401k plans. The estimate is that 50% of all small 401k plans could be in a pooled employer plan within the next 5 years. Okay, that's, we don't know if that's true, but that's the estimates. And from our vantage point, what that means is money in motion. And money in motion has always signaled opportunity for advisors. And here, if this works the way it's supposed to, this is going to be trillions of dollars that's going to be moving around, probably, the most money in motion ever, certainly in my career. So why wouldn't every RA want to be in the 401k business? That's the question. Well, those of you who are already in it, the barriers to entry, we find it's a tough business, okay? And the barriers to entry are significant and they're costly. I'll name a few. You have to develop a sales process. You have to absorb the cost to set up staff and systems. You've got to accept a longer sales cycle and lower profit margins. And you've got to invest the time and effort to obtain knowledge in the 401k operations and administration. But our position on this for people that don't want to do all this work for themselves, or that don't want to continue to do this work for their smaller plans, is the right partnership can eliminate these barriers. Now, what we're going to introduce is the partnership that we've built. Okay, this is the PEP that we've created. It's the Unity 401k. The first year the PEP could be offered was in 2021, and that's when we launched. We've done a lot of studying on this with the passage of the Secure Act and all through 2020. We've already achieved scale. We have about 150 million. And scale, and Ari referred to this yesterday, scale is absolutely a critical component for a PEP to be successful. And basically, we think we've been able to do that. We did it by basically working like hell all through 2021 to get the right number of plans into the Unity 401k. And we expect that this thing could be as big as 500 million by the end of 2025, if not sooner. Now, here are the PEP dynamics, okay? The partnership dynamics. It's the opportunity to bolt on a high quality 401k business line to your practice, or to enhance your 401k practice with a PEP that you may not have access to. It basically, the Unity 401k is an independent pooled employer provider. And I can't stress the word independent enough, as it relates to no conflicts and it relates to transparency. It's a new business line that to join it from a partnership level requires little or no work or cost. There's a 50% revenue share with NS Capital. The increase in revenue is, of course, tied to 401k plan growth. And we've created a proven sales process with significant support services to make the partnership work. And the other thing, very important, it works for startups and it can monetize small plans, which was what I was talking about, which may be of appeal to some of you. Before we had the PEP, we just couldn't do a small plan. A startup. It just didn't make any sense to us whatsoever. We couldn't make it work. We couldn't be cost effective. It was too much work. Now, with the PEP in place, it's really, really simple. Okay, you get the census, you find out how many highly compensated executives there are, and that's all you need to put it in place. All right, basically to get it going. And we think we're seeing a big opportunity as these mandates for IRAs come in companies in the different states. We think there's going to be a big opportunity for startups and smaller companies to just go into a PEP as opposed to the mandated IRA. We were studying CalPERS plan, and they were bragging about the fact that they had funds that the expense ratios were going to be somewhere around 95%, and they thought that was going to be just great. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. The other thing is we're going to limit this to RIAs. Okay, we can't do it for everybody, so it's going to be a select group of RIAs nationwide. So you know this, but this is the pooled employer plan, the whole thing. We got economies of scale. The PEP offers employers superior services with a lower overall cost. You know, the PEP, obviously, you know this, considered a single plan under IRC, tax code and ERISA, elimination of the Form 5500 and related costs. PEP is a single signer, elimination of the ERISA bond, fiduciary liability insurance and related costs, elimination of plan document restatement fees, and for the bigger plans, the elimination of plan level audit and costs, although that's still working its way through. Nobody knows quite what's going on with the audits just yet. Risk mitigation, this is significant, okay? Now the plan administrator is the pool plan provider, so the 402A, they no longer have to sponsor an individual plan. You've got your 403A and trust and custody, which is standard. The RIA acts as a 338 investment manager, and you have a 316 fiduciary who assumes all the full day-to-day administration and regulatory responsibility. Institutional investment lineup that comes about through scale, low cost, and very high quality. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is all these check marks are features that are in the PEP that come through with the PEP in a single offering that are not readily available in a standalone plan for a small employer. All is the result of scale, and basically, we got the other important thing is the employer can retain some independence for plan design. I didn't mention that, and you wind up with a fully integrated end-to-end services and at a lower cost. These are the component parts. You got a fiduciary advisor, the pool plan provider, the 402A, okay, the investment, the 338, integrated administration, the 316, trust and custody, the 403A, and then you've got your record keeping. The unique thing is that in the PEP, okay, basically all 5 of the 6 components are now bringing to the PEP a named fiduciary, okay, who's not the sponsor, and that's the important thing. These are, this is a standard responsibility grid. What you're seeing on the right is all the responsibilities that a single employer plan, a standalone plan has to take. When you put in a PEP, the unity, now the example that we're giving between us, okay, as the fiduciary advisor and the pool plan provider who we're using Newport, basically the vast majority of responsibilities move over to the PEP. This is the way we design an investment lineup. It's 3 tiers. Tier 1 is for individual funds. Tier 2 is risk models, and tier 3 is target date funds. And the key to this is scale. All right. So here's the total lineup. Tier 1 on the left, the models in the center, and the target dates on the right. And what you're seeing here is most of these are CITs, okay, and very low cost institutional share classes. And normally the CITs, as you know, they can normally can require a larger minimum investment. But the weighted expense ratio, if 50% is in funds and 50% of the target dates of this lineup, is 0.10%, 10 basis points. Now compare that 10 basis points to what I just told you about the mandated RIA in California, which is 95 basis points. This is a good example about a single fund. This is a negotiation that we did with Goldman Sachs. It's a collective trust for the stable value fund. Normally what they require is a minimum investment in the fund of 20 million and a planned minimum size of 200 million in order to get that 32 basis point fee. We have it for the Unity plan. So here's the way it looks. Okay, so here's a typical, and this is an absolute average. Okay, we didn't inflate the costs here at all. If anything, these are middle range costs for a standalone plan with the providers that I just mentioned, the major insurance companies, the mutual fund companies, and the paychecks companies are even worse. Okay, but this is actually a Hancock plan to be honest. But the investment lineup is $23,500. Okay, the trading cost, because they're predominantly active mutual funds, which is not a surprise, $19,500. You've got a non-fiduciary advisor who's really a sales agent, $15,000. You've now got a TPA is $3,000, and then the record keeping is $22,000. So the all-in cost is $1.66, $83,000 for a $5 million plan with 50 participants. Now, this is, as I said, we've seen costs in this marketplace that range anywhere from 1.25 to 2.5. So this is a mid-range plan, not unduly expensive, but not cheap either. Here's how it stacks up against the Unity 401k. Investment lineup, 10 basis points, 5,000. Trading costs, mostly index funds, 5,000. Now you get a 338 fiduciary advisor for the same 15,000. There's no TPA needed. The record keeping and the 316 fiduciary administration comes in at 6,700. We're all in at 0.63, $31,700. And critically important here is the record keeping in the 316 is a fixed fee. Now, this is something we negotiated directly with Newport because we would not pay asset-based fees for these services. The savings for the Unity 401k PEP is $51,000 per year. Okay, that's 62% lower than what they're currently paying today. Superior services with lower overall cost. This is a grid. Okay, this just shows you the compounding effect of saving that $51,300 and leaving it in the plan and allowing it to grow. Within 5 years, the participants have an additional $637,000. 10 years, $2,671,000. 15 years, $8,202,000. 20 years, $22,267,000. All this money in green right now is going to providers. Okay, now all this money would go and stay in the participants' accounts. This also is a good example why Einstein said compound interest was the 8th wonder of the world. This is the sales process that we have created to implement this PEP and to work with our partners on. It starts with an introduction, an intro show, an introduction first meeting. The close on that first meeting is a complimentary benchmark, which is step 2. After the benchmark, when we reveal the issues in the plan, we'll say, do you want a recommendation? And 99 times out of 100 in this market, the response has been yes. Right. Then you go to a small fact-finding sheet, and then you go to the proposal. This now is an example of partnership compensation. So how would this work for partners? So we get a bunch of examples here, but here's a firm, okay, has 5 advisors, and we're just making an assumption that basically each advisor brings in one $5 million plan per year. And that basically the average growth of that plan is 16% from that standpoint. The partner compensation is the total fee to the plan is 30 basis points. The partner gets half at 15. If you look, this is how it works over time. Within 10 years, there's been an additional $800,000 of revenue that can be captured by that firm. Here's a firm with 10 advisors. Okay, same thing. Each advisor brings in one $5 million plan. Same metrics over 10 years. Now it's 1.6 million of additional revenue. And here's a bigger thing where basically you've got advisors, 10 advisors, each bringing in one plan, average plan size 10 million, same metrics. The revenue at the end of 10 years would be $3.2 million additional revenue. So it's a lucrative business. We've already got one partner that we're starting to work with, an RIA, and that partner, the first 2 opportunities that they teed up, one is 20 million and one is 25. So, you know, these numbers could be dramatically different based on the book of business that exists and the access to the clientele that exists. Little stuff about us. I mean, basically, we're a very focused and experienced RIA fiduciary consultant. We created the 401k, the Unity 401k, the pooled employer plan in 2021. I'll answer questions about that journey if anybody's interested. Currently, we have 27 plans. Actually, this is a little old. We've added 3 more startups, so now we're up to 30. About 150 million AUM. The Unity 401k is positioned for scalability to improve both pricing and quality over time. Our 401k plan retention since the day we started this is 100%. So this is for partners. The way it works is the due diligence is to once, understand what we're doing, understand the sales process and the engagement process. Step 2 is what do we bring to the table in terms of onboarding and administration. the skills there. And step 3 is the work we do in education and fiduciary reporting. And for anyone who's interested, Ari has our information. You can just contact us and we're happy to discuss more. And that's it. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Sorry for this.
Okay.
I was getting a package from FedEx at the time.
That's
We do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Number 1, how do you find the trading costs for a typical plan?
We have a system that we've done, and we've done some research on that. And basically, it's a grid. I think we got it from Fiduciary 360, and it just will tell you what the trading. What you do is you look up the turnover, okay, and then there's a formula where you apply the turnover to the metric, okay, and that's the way it works. And it's by asset class. It's large cap, international, small cap, mid cap.
And last but not least, from our good friend Mike Webb, many MEPs failed because they could not achieve critical mass in terms of assets. And we learned at last week's that 401k conference, which, Schilling for the event last week in Vegas, that 15 PEPs have already failed. Why do we think that PEPs will succeed where MEPs did not?
Well, because first of all, they're geared. I think, Ari, and you can back me up on this. I think they're geared to a different market. You know what I mean? There weren't many people that could really be the pool plan provider for MEPs. So there just weren't a lot of people that did.
The pool plan provider didn't exist.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But there weren't many firms that were interested in doing MEPs. Number 1. Okay, would you agree with that, Ari?
There were, but I think the beauty of a PEP over the MEP is that there's actually a process. The MEPs were not really spelled out in terms of fiduciary delegation that the PEPs are.
Yeah, and they were different.
That's why I think it's going to be a bigger hit.
Yeah, and you also had the bad apple rule, and you had the commonality issue. So there were a lot more. I think the MEPs, and we didn't do any MEPs, so I don't know that much about it. But my feedback on them is they were just more difficult to put together. And we have no commonality, we have no bad apple rule. So I think it's an easier plan for a small plan to come into.
No, I think that's without a doubt. But I think that, some of the lessons that we learn with MEPs, we will have a lot of plan providers who will not learn from these lessons.
I think you're right. One of the challenges that we had, and Aaron and I talked about this, is, we were waiting, in the business. So we were looking at the Secure Act very, very closely. We were paying attention to it in 2019 when it passed. And then we really started to get into the weeds on this in 2020. We really dug down. We had a number of record keepers that came to us and said they were going to do a pool plan provider. We negotiated with all of them. We actually went with Newport for a very specific reason. They have been in the MEP business for a long time.
Yes.
And pretty good at it, you know what I mean, from that standpoint. So they had the skill set, but even with that skill set, and this, Ari talked about this, he just said it again, nobody knew what the hell they were doing. We got the assurances that if we could bring our plans in, okay, and we had 23, I think, at the time, and we said, yeah, you bring them in January, we'll sign them up and we're out of the gate. That's what we were told. And we signed a letter of intent, and that's what our negotiation. And it wasn't like that at all. It didn't work that way at all. Nobody really knew what the hell they were doing. It took us a full 9 months to integrate our plans into the PEP, the ones that we wanted to go in. Pissed off all our clients, okay? Did not go smoothly, all right? We were very lucky that we have a very good relationship with our clients. We also had given them preferred pricing to be a new entrant into the PEP. We also paid for all the termination fees, okay? So it was a very arduous and expensive endeavor, for us to build, quote unquote, an independent PEP. Now, having been through it, I like where we're sitting here today.
Right.
This partnership, but I wouldn't wish that experience on anybody. I'll tell you.
Sure. We'll see what happens. I think that again, it's a tough market out there, but I think eventually people are going to get traction. It's amusing sometimes to see who's in the PEP space. I think if people read my writings, the TPA, that I had a major dust up about deconversion fees and terminations and whatnot, are actually in the PEP business with one of the larger bundled providers in the United States, one of the big insurance companies. So it's going to be going to have a good laugh when that falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you look at, and Ari, you know this, we studied this a lot, in our benchmarking process. Boy,
Yeah.
you look at what's going on with these, it's all about the cannibalization. They're scared to death on this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So the issue really is also, we look at the quality of the services. And we saw something with the insurance company that was doing this, and basically they were bringing in Iron Financial at 10 basis points to be the 338. And they were bringing in somebody else as a third-party provider to be the 316, and that was another 5 basis points.
Right.
And on top of that, they're all charging asset-based fees for record keeping.
Yep.
So and this, these are not good. Those plans that I just described can in no way compete with the Unity plan. Okay, and the way that that's been designed, because we worked really hard not to have any of that crap in it. Is the best way I can say it.
I appreciate the presentation, and I hope people got something out of it. Again, I think the PEP space is certainly a market we're going to see for the next couple of years grow, exponentially.
Yeah.
I think that again, in my mind, the great area for it is the state mandated and city mandated coverage. I'd rather put my money in a PEP if I'm a employer than putting my money in with the state's IRA savers program.
I was talking about, Ari, I'll let you go after this, but we really studied. We have some clients out in California, an advisor,
Yeah.
and 95 basis points is what their average expense ratio is on their funds,
Sure.
and they were bragging about it. Okay.
And we don't know how these providers got hired. It's government. Who knows who's who got you in, as they say.
Exactly.
So I appreciate it, and that's going to be it for that 401k National Virtual Conference. And again, we're going to be back live in April in Phoenix, Miami, Charlotte, and hopefully New York. We'll see what happens. And go to that 401ksite.com for further information. Next couple of weeks, we'll have a date when we're going to do this again virtually in 2023, which is hard to believe. But then again, this is the year I get catch up. So anyway, thank you, and take care and have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ari, for the opportunity.